The young generation awakens on Y254, the leading youth TV station in Kenya. We treat you to current affairs, entrepreneurship, health, and human interest conversations.
It's art, it's culture,
Movies, gossip and trends, sports,
drama.
we bring you a vibe like no other, straight to your living room.
to keep you informed, inspired, entertained, and most of all, refreshed.
We are such a vibe.
Y254. Imagine.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome world, welcome Kenya. Good morning to all of you wherever you are watching us from. This is Good Morning Kenya on KBC Channel 1. How are you doing? It's a brilliant Tuesday morning, the 12th of November 2024, and we are back again. So the campaigns to, not campaigns per se, but the politics that is now headed towards 2027, we cannot run away from that. It's already here with us, all right? The political drumbeats are now being heard, from just beyond the horizon. And I want us to take a look at that. The effects of the impeachment. Remember, there is that crucial vote by the Gen Z, all right? How important is that vote? And there are people who are now saying that that vote is going to determine who will be, different factors in 2027. But then again, why are we looking at Mount Kenya? Is Mount Kenya, we've had this discussion for far too long, but another matrix into it, the ouster or Deputy President, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. How important is it going to be moving forward? Different alliances, different parties to be formed. And who is going to be whose friend in 2027, not who is going to be whose enemy. This time around is who is going to be whose friend. Cindy or Vivian?
Mm-hmm.
Are we friends?
Of course we're friends, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Very good. Good morning.
A very good morning to you, Victor, and a very good morning to each and every one of you who is tuned in on the show. Thank you for starting the morning with us. As always, this is where you get to be informed on everything that is making headlines around the country and in the world as well. And today will be no different. Of course, Victor will be having his panelists, and they will be covering most of the things that he has mentioned. And for me this morning, I just want to give you a quote, and it says, just a small positive change, or just a small positive change of mind. You allowing yourself to have a positive thought in the morning can change your entire day. So just as you've woken up, as we're beginning the day, have positive thoughts in your mind, and I believe that you'll have a wonderful day. Good morning, Mike. Are you having a good day?
Oh yes, I'm having a good day. My morning is fantastic, and you have put it rightly. It's all about changing the mindset and going for what you believe is rightfully for you. Work hard and change your mindset and go and achieve. Welcome to Good Morning Kenya. My name is Mike Megwe, and there's a story that has caught my attention on the second page of The Standard. How lack of basic knowledge denies Kenyans justice. A report by the National Crime Research Center indicates that Kenyans lack basic legal knowledge touching on the right to bail and bond. That is very interesting. And this deficiency is in knowledge is also touches on people within the criminal justice system as well. Do you know your rights? Do you know what is supposed to happen once you are arrested? Well, you need to know a few things of law that could help you navigate any legal, say, hurdle that you might face. Good morning, Ray. Do you know your legal rights?
Good morning, Mike. I would say it's not the lack of know-how in terms of what your rights are, is what is the situation on ground? Have you ever tried to stand up for yourself, knowing fully well that these are within your rights and they are being infringed on, and still you get yourself in a precarious situation? Well, it's not, for me, I would argue, it's not the lack of know-how in as far as rights are concerned. It's those who are supposed to enforce the law do it with impunity, you know, and that I think is what needs to be addressed. Not if people know their rights per se, but also those who are expected to enforce this law are going to abide to the edicts of the law. I'd want to ask Victor this morning, and would quickly pan to him. I'd want him to share just the front page of one of the dailies that he has. I'd want you to give us the front page of
The Daily Nation?
the Daily Nation.
Yes.
And maybe we can zoom into it. What does it read there?
The front page of the Daily Nation, I have got two people here, but it says that plum job for 6 billion shillings oil scam suspect. Plum job for 6 billion shillings oil scam suspect. Kicker, Trade Cabinet Secretary, that is Salim Vuria, is on the spot for allegedly influencing the appointment of one Lucy Anangwe as the managing director of the Kenya National Trading Corporation, despite being adversely mentioned in the 6.5 billion shillings edible oil scandal. So Ms. Anangwe was appointed, her appointment rather comes despite an advisory from KNTC board chairperson Hussein Debasso.
Now,
Yes.
KNTC there was in the center of a scandal there that, you know, it had the rights to import some of the fast-moving consumer goods there. And that is a story that is going to be taking shape as we proceed there. The question of integrity when it comes to matters leadership. Now, Mike, you also have another daily. Kindly just share your front page. I think the one who has on matters corruption. So what does it read?
This is the Standard, and it's reading home of quote-unquote wash cleaners. Government report points to a worrying trend where money launderers have found a safe haven. The rise in suspicious financial transactions over the past 2 years show the multi-billion shilling illicit trade is not only thriving but putting the economy under pressure.
Thank you very much for that update on what is on that front page. Now, Vivian, I'd want to ask you a question, and this is entirely your opinion. Government has claimed that inflation, or rather the numbers indicate that inflation is down to 2.7%. Have you felt the impact of a drop in inflation?
Well, as you said, this should be my opinion, and to be honest, I haven't really felt the change at all, because I don't know about you, but when I go to the supermarket, I feel like the prices are just the same.
Okay.
So I haven't really felt the difference.
Okay. Thank you for that.
But
you?
Regina,
Yeah?
that's on the same breath, and to pick it from where she's left, how can we measure inflation? How would I feel that everything is okay?
Okay. Inflation is driven by so many factors. If you were to calculate inflation, as it were, you know, you'd also have to look at also the CPI index, you know, the consumer price index, or price index. It also compares the purchase power of people and how much a value of what you have. Let me give you a very basic explanation. Today, what can you buy with 1,000 shillings?
Me?
Yeah. Like, plan for your 1,000 shillings quickly so that we can get into the bulletin.
Okay, let's just go basics.
Yes. What can you buy with 1,000 shillings?
The Kenyan style, you know, loaf of bread. Let's
How
start with
much
that.
does a loaf of bread go for?
It starts at around 60 bob to around infinite.
Let me
depending on
give
the
you,
loaf.
let me give you Basi a scope, Victor, because I know you might not be the
So
one who is
from
going to
around-
the supermarket. That's the truth. I'm sorry for putting into this particular sport. But 1,000 shillings, let's quickly break it down to the math. Those who go shopping, that is. So Vivian, a loaf of bread to feed a family goes for around 105 shillings.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
So that is 105. Out of 1,000, you have roughly around 85 shillings, right?
Yes.
You have not 85 shillings, you've already 885.
Yeah.
Now we go down to a packet of milk. It goes for around 60 to 70 shillings, right? So you've already done 105 plus 70, that is 175. We're just doing one meal, that's breakfast.
Yeah.
For you to have a balanced meal, we say that mkate na chai, right? Try and throw in a boiled egg or a fried egg, and we are looking at the upper middle class because not everybody even takes breakfast these days. So throw in an egg. A crate of eggs goes for around 450, 600 depending if it's kienyeji. So one single egg goes for around 20 shillings. So in breakfast alone, you have spent over 200 shillings. Breakfast alone, right?
Yeah.
So you're traveling to the CBD. 85% of the workforce is domiciled within the CBD. So on average, to and fro, let's do 100 shillings. Right? To and fro, make it around 150 to 200. 200, depending on if you're going to do peak hours or not. So you're already down to 405 to just do breakfast, to get you to the office, and you're assured to come back. Fine. Are you having lunch in the office? Are you going to have lunch in the office? Let's say
unainama.
Inapita.
Either you decide to have an air burger, but you'll throw in a bottle of water, right?
Yeah.
So a bottle of water, retail, maybe 70 shillings. So we are down to 470 shillings, right?
Yes.
So out of that, we have a little over 500 bob. So in the evening, you're expected to walk in back to your home with something for the wife and the children. And even if you do not have children, yourself, what will you have? What will you have for breakfast the following day and also for dinner? So you pitia your favorite mama mboga. If it's a family, you think, I'm going to spend like maybe 100 shillings to buy my skuma wiki, mix it up with terere, then mix up with some slices either of fish, the one you buy sliced up. So maybe a piece fetches for around 50 shillings, right? Yeah. So you have your sukuma for 100 and maybe your slices of fish for an equal amount, right? Now we are down to 770. Then because you're going to down it with ugali, there was no flour by the time you're leaving in the morning. So you pass by your local retail or even a supermarket if you like, you buy a kilo of unga. That's around 179, thereabout. So you're already down to 800, 900 to just have breakfast, transport to get to work, yes?
Yes.
And assure yourself of dinner. You had an air burger during lunch hour. So in essence, you say that 1,000 bob has taken care of breakfast and dinner, but did not manage to take care of your lunch. So was this the same case 10 years back? That's the question. That is how simply you put, or rather compare inflation. That's the value of shillings. And I can hear my producer rushing me up to get to the bulletin, but it's good for people to understand that inflation is calculated by your purchase power. How much can you buy with what you have? And that's why you can compare how the economy has been going. So tonight we're going to be talking about agriculture, looking at it in as far as matters of food security is concerned on the shift. Is government delivering on its mandate when it comes to ensuring that Kenyans, you and I, are food secure? So let's meet tonight at 9 p.m. Now, starting off with a story that actually got the country, on tenterhooks, so to speak, is that former Mungiki leader Maina Njenga is now a free man after the Director of Public Prosecution dropped charges citing a lack of cooperation between some witnesses. Maina Njenga had been charged with being a member of the outlawed Mungiki sect and engaging in organized crime.
According to the state, 20 witnesses were unwilling to testify against Njenga due to their relationship with the former sect leader. The court directed that Maina Njenga and 11 co-accused persons be discharged, their bonds refunded, and their phones returned.
This court's ruling is explicit as to the admission by the prosecution of its grounds for termination of the case. That is the account of lack of evidence.
This willy-nilly decision by some officers to charge people and then come and say, sorry, we did not conclude on the investigation, should stop.
Tunashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu kwa sababu ya hiyo haki tumepata. Tunashukuru mahakama, tunashukuru mawakili wote ambao walifanya hiyo kazi na nyinyi pia, na tunasema Mungu awabariki.
Ukiona wengine ambao hawamo kotini.
Elsewhere, Omar Ali Mohammed, the main suspect behind the abduction and the gruesome sexual assault on blogger Bruce John Hajira, denied all charges leveled against him.
Kinyume na sheria, unakubali au unakataa?
Omar is accused of masterminding the beastly assault on September 12, 2024, in an incident that was met with widespread condemnation. The case will be mentioned on 15 November, when the court will decide on whether to grant or deny the suspect bail. Meanwhile, a 3-judge bench of the High Court has postponed the hearing of the case challenging the proposed leasing of JKIA to Indian conglomerate Adani Group to December 17.
As workers, we remain opposed to the intention of giving out JKIA to Adani. We have said not once, not twice, that it's not a good deal for this country. It is not a good deal for workers. It's not a good deal for the sector, that is the aviation sector in totality.
A petition filed by activist Tony Gashoka and Mount Kenya juries seeking to stop the government from leasing the airport will proceed on November 27th.
I'm sure that is a development that is going to feature heavily in our conversation in as far as politics is concerned, looking at the larger Mount Kenya when it comes to scope. What is now the entry, or rather the return of Maina Njenga into the fore? What does it mean for Mount Kenya? That's a conversation that Victor is going to be handling as we proceed. Now, still keeping up with politics, members of parliament from Bomet County want the county's health chief officer to take responsibility for the death of a patient that occurred at the Longisa Referral Hospital, allegedly due to negligence. Now, led by Bomet Senator Hilary Sigei, the lawmakers lamented the healthcare in the region, saying the system was in limbo and various medical facilities lacking medication. The MPs also want the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to investigate alleged cases of bribery in hospitals within Bomet County.
And this one calls upon the immediate resignation of those who are responsible. In this case, we have got the hospital superintendent, who should have immediately taken responsibility. We have got the chief officer health. He should immediately have taken responsibility and resigned for this failure, because this is a confirmation of their failed leadership and their inability to do the right thing, that is to give appropriate leadership.
How can you have somebody coming from security? I understand he was coming from prisons, and is now the CC for health, the CEO, I mean, for health. It is very unfortunate. I think that is why we are having a lot of problems. We need to ask Parachok to fire these guys and put the right people in their places. We have people who are qualified to do the issues of health.
There was an instance where a whole lorry came to a dispensary called Kabiangek, and people thought that it was bringing in medicine to assist the locals. And the people who were there were called to come and unload the lorry, only to realize that they were unloading packets of condoms only, and not medicine, for that matter. So the whole issue of health in the county of Bomet is not working.
This incident must be a wake-up call for the entire country, and we are saying that this will never happen again, because from today we want to see heads roll. We want to thank the government particularly for sending the anti-corruption unit, and we want to see results. We don't want to see issues being taken lightly.
I also call upon the members of the County Assembly to really play their oversight role, because they are the ones who are supposed to be assisting us in the ground. The members of the National Assembly, the Senate and the members of the Parliament have come out to talk about these corruption issues because they have the details in their fingertips and we are waiting for the relevant authorities to give us what is really happening. And it is now upon the members of the County Assembly to make sure that these things are followed to the letter.
Okay.
Now to politics is that Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has replaced a former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua as as a party leader. Now the Deputy President, however, according to the party officials, is that Gachagua will continue to remain a member until he decides to resign. Here's the story.
The ruling executive committee meeting of the ruling UDA party held at its headquarters in Nairobi on Monday resolved to designate Deputy President Kithure Kindiki as its deputy party leader.
How are you, my brother? Yes. How are you? Good to see you.
The change of guard comes a month after the impeachment of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, which was succeeded by Kindiki swearing in as the next second in command a week ago.
I, Kithure Kindiki.
His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, ceased to hold office of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya.
After taking the helm of the party, Kindiki vowed to assist his party leader, President William Ruto, to grow the party's democracy through holding grassroots elections and registering new members.
Elections, the grassroots elections that have been going on, we will again, under the leadership of our party leader and consultations with the party organs, make sure that we proceed with that process of completing grassroots party elections.
Kindiki said he would consult with member lawmakers and promote the ideals of the party in the day-to-day running of the political outfit.
I must thank you for acting swiftly to make sure that our party does not experience any leadership gaps so that we move forward the same way the other constitutional process of the transition in the office of the Deputy President of the Republic has already been concluded.
The UDA constitution designates the president as the party leader and the deputy president as the deputy party leader, respectively. However, sources within the party reveal that Rigathi Gachagua will have the liberty to remain a member unless he opts to resign.
As we shift to matters business, is that investigations are still on to the Shiner's Boy High School Nakuru incident there, as well as, Telegram social media platform closed in the country owing to matters of cheating. Now, the Office of the Auditor General has recommended that Parliament create a framework with guiding clauses that will protect public entities from rogue contractors when entering into contractual agreements. Nancy Gathungu says this will reduce instances of siphoning of public funds.
The construction of Line 5 oil pipeline had been scheduled to be completed within 18 months from the date of contract on July 1st, 2014. However, the project experienced delays occasioned by the change of design specifications by the project engineer. The project was then completed on 30th June 2018, over 4 years later. Following this, the contractor applied for 5 extension of time claims which were disputed by the project engineer. Auditor General Nancy Gathungu, in her review of KBC accounts for the year, flagged the role, citing risk to the loss of public funds.
It's important as we're looking at that tool, the low-lying fruit now is to ensure that we can even have a guideline that for all contracts there must be certain clauses to protect public interest and public funds, where if there is failure, then legal officers must explain.
Gathungu noted that the creation of a standard guiding tool will ensure public entities remained insured against tenderpreneurs who source for extra funds through extension claims of procured projects.
All legal counsel or all legal officers in public entities need to be trained so that when you're seated at the negotiation table, when you're looking at a contract, when you're looking at those clauses, there must be clauses to protect public funds, and there must be clauses to protect the public entity in terms of an exit clause.
Members of Parliament also raised concern that the Kenya Pipeline Company did not appeal the court rulings issued against them, leading to an additional burden in the scarce public resources.
After the PRA has reviewed and they have noted that the right process was followed, they should not go to court. But you know, there are some of the companies that they feel they have to win a tender. If they don't get it, they try to frustrate the procuring entities by going to court after the PRA to waste time.
When a contractor has been given a contract, say 1 year or 2 years, why should the contractor take 10 years or 8 years, excess of what they agreed?
Senators also sought an explanation from KBC management on plans to decommission Line 1 to be a water transporting channel, noting that environmental hazards remained a priority for the safety of consumers.
We need also to ensure that we have contracts that protect Kenyans, not only the contractors. I think doing that, and that's our moral obligation to the Kenyans, they expect us to do that. I think if there is nothing else that we'll achieve, if we achieve that, then we'll have saved this country.
Now, there's an urgent need to build capacity of institutions of higher learning to support learning of generative artificial intelligence and edge computing to increase Kenya's skill pool. Speaking during the unveiling of CIO 100 conference scheduled for this month, stakeholders called for collaboration and development of a curriculum to ensure there is enough AI talent needed by the local enterprises to drive growth of the local economy.
For many small and medium enterprises in the country, access to modern technologies such as generative artificial intelligence, edge computing and machine learning, which are key to driving growth, enhancing efficiency and security, is being limited due to insufficient local talent pool. As a result, many enterprises are forced to source the technologies, which often drive costs for many enterprises.
There are a lot of people within Kenya that actually have these skills, and they've been brought together either through tech hubs to develop solutions or bespoke solutions that can help the smaller companies. So some of these smaller companies are actually running software that has been developed locally in Kenya, and that is very helpful to them, and that's affordable.
Through enhanced collaboration with private sectors, chief information officers are calling for urgent development of a curriculum that will ensure companies in Kenya acquire local talent and reduce costs of acquiring the new technology. Increased AI adoption, for instance, is being backed to help companies reduce fraud, especially in the financial sector, and improve production processes for manufacturers.
Some of our curriculums are sort of outdated, and by the time they are releasing the workforce to the industry, we have to start the training again, right, and give them the practical space. So, and one thing I wanted to point out is that I think the government also and the learning institute need to make this curriculum thing more agile.
But again, it's not just about technology, it's also about understanding your insider threats, because some of these guys work with people inside, so it's a multifaceted strategy that you must adopt, and the use of AI helps us in doing that.
The 16th edition of CIO 100 Awards and Symposium is set to bring together IT leaders from across the continent with discussions revolving around emerging technologies.
We've tried to make it more African. We've got a list of good speakers from Kenya and around Africa, from Nigeria, South Africa, and all those countries that have really made impact on the technology space.
Now to the very last update on in the headlines this morning is in regard to sports, is that the National Soccer Harambee Stars team has left the country for South Africa to take part in the remaining 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Zimbabwe and Namibia respectively. Kenya will play their first match against Zimbabwe Friday at 7 p.m. and will be live on KBC Channel 1.
The Enkin Firat Chargers will be captained by Aldo Hill top scorer Michael Lunga, who featured against Cameroon, where he scored the lone goal as they beat Harambee Stars 4-1. Also in the squad is Kenya's under-20 captain Amos Onjala, who earned his first call-up to the senior team.
We have to pressure, we have to push, so they will not open the games, they will close the games, they will try to play on time. We are aware of this, and we will have our ideas how to open the game.
Kenya will play their first match against Zimbabwe on Friday at 7 p.m. and will be live on KBC Channel 1, with the second match against Namibia scheduled for 19th of November and will be live on Y254 from 4 p.m. Both matches will be played at the new Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane, South Africa. Harambee Stars, who are currently third on the Group J standings with 4 points, must win both encounters to qualify for the 2025 African Cup of Nations. Cameroon lead the group with 10 points, followed by Zimbabwe with 8 points, while Namibia are pointless.
Sasa ndio masomo inaja officially. Hey, Kenyanchi, do you have an extra laptop I can borrow from you? Yani, hapa tuko biashara wewe unaongelea mambo ya kubolo. Kubolo no, lakini kununua iko sawa sawa.
Wait, Julia, you mean there's a school where people are taught how to bleach? Kamene. Emojis are those two little icons, the colored ones, normally on WhatsApp or text messages. So, where was I? Hapo kwa pa. Well, that was the other unfinished story. This is another one.
So 17 engagement parties, and none of them is yours. Julia, I ask again. Uone sida hapo?
Harambee Stars doing the pressing. Odiampo heading towards the byline and just overrunning that ball.
Harambee Stars are set to face Zimbabwe on the 15th November at the Orlando Stadium in Johannesburg, South Africa at 7 p.m. Catch the matches live on KBC Channel 1 as both teams chase slots at the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations.
On KBC Channel 1, we are a TV station like no other. Get a taste of the best in entertainment.
Yes, indeed.
Feel the passion.
Will you promise me?
I swear that you will never lose me. I can't get married to you.
I'm sure you knew about it. That's why you were making fun of me.
Experience the drama.
Get out.
Who is the man in this one?
And the laughter.
Hii wigi umevaa kichwani.
Sio wakati tulikuwa tunaapishwa tunapewa mheshimiwa.
Move to the beat.
We are live from Broadcasting House.
And get informed on the latest happenings. KBC Channel 1.
Wow. Yeah!
We are the full package.
Oh, yes.
And Kenya's watching.
Thank you very much for joining us.
The young generation awakens on Y254, the leading youth TV station in Kenya. We treat you to current affairs, entrepreneurship, health, and human interest conversations.
It's art, it's culture.
Movies, gossip and trends, sports, drama.
We bring you a vibe like no other, straight to your living room.
To keep you informed, inspired, entertained, and most of all, refreshed.
We are such a vibe.
Y254. Imagine.
right, great. Welcome back. So it's 7 minutes past 7 a.m. on this beautiful, beautiful Tuesday morning. So we are here. Let's talk about politics, and basically that's how it is. We consume politics on a daily basis. Yeah, and before we started the show, Regina was giving a breakdown on matters inflation. But I have a feeling she didn't finish to give us the full details of what inflation is all about and how it affects you as Mwananchi. I'm so sure it has to be continued. Regina, are we okay? Okay, yes. Regina will have to continue that. Let's continue this. So on studio, I have Wakili, Judge Hitzley, joining me on set. Wakili, good morning, and good to see you as well.
Good morning, thank you, and good morning, and good morning, Kenya.
Yes, last time we were here, we were talking about the issue of states and elections. Our prediction, it went the way it went.
Yes.
And we have a new president for now.
Yes.
What do you make of that? Let me start from where we left last week, then come back home.
Oh, yeah, thank you. The U.S. elections, we have a president-elect who I think is going to be sworn in January.
Yeah.
He's in the process of putting in his government, basically, his cabinet and other appointees, including ambassadors. I've heard the Kenyans have written a letter on the same, on some preferences here and there. Of course, that constitution of the government is a prerogative of the president-elect, Donald Trump. It was a historical issue because that's an astronomical comeback. He made a comeback in a way that is not contestable because it's not a close mark as between him and Joe Biden the last time, or him and Clinton when he was doing his first term. So he, of course, beat Clinton, and then he was beaten by Biden by small margins, but not the one that is there now because he beat Kamala Harris, probably with a bigger margin than expected. Actually, in respect, that it's going to be thinner than it happened because of the predictions. But it looks like towards the tail end, he was seen as the Mr. Fix-It for many things. Issue of immigration is a big issue there because every day there's an influx of people, foreigners, taking up jobs from the Americans, and basically what they call themselves as adulterating the community in terms of people pay taxes, toil to pay taxes and build their government, but the benefits are spread all over, including to foreigners. And it will happen to any other country. Take, for instance, at the border with Somalia, then the Somalis probably have a war or whatever they have, then they move in. We had that catastrophe, or that problem when we had when we were hosting Somalis probably in the north at the camp as refugees. And they came to Nairobi, they were all over town. And at a point, there was a hue and outcry because they have to go back on account of we can only host a certain number. So immigration is a bigger issue, like any other country would. So we understand from that perspective. The issue of economy, yes, it's doing better because the inflation is at its lowest ever in the US. But it looks like there is no confidence in the continuity of management of the economy. He looks like the Mr. Fix-It in the manner in which he presented himself. And of course, lastly, we have the international policies. More importantly, the younger generation looking at and voicing concern about the war, especially in Gaza, between the Palestine and Israel. That became an issue. Looks like Biden was not decisive. So decisiveness, he was seen as a decisive character needed for the president of US. And then looking at his term and Biden's term, or the Democrats and the Republican term, during his term there were no wars because he seemed to be flexing his muscle against any aggression by any state. In fact, Russia did not attempt to attack any country, including Ukraine at them, even if it had the plans. During Biden's time, yes, it is. So, yes, the cocktail of character, it's more of the character issue. He wasn't the best. Because, of course, there is the issue of the reproductive health. It was a big issue, but it looks like that didn't take the center stage as opposed to the economy one and immigration.
But we have to give it to Kamala Harris, because coming almost towards the tail end of the presidency of Biden and getting whatever she got, that was a great performance, and history already made. So probably if she comes back in the next round of elections, we can give it to her.
You see, campaign is an interactive process. I'll tell you because of a personal experience on that issue of Kamala Harris. The time when I was coming for the position of senator back home, and then 3 months or so, or 4 months, I converted the position of governor. Now, my character was dominantly that of a Senate candidate. Then towards the tail end, you want the character of a governor candidate. You see, positions are characterized. The characteristic comes because of the socialization and the national psyche or general psyche to the population that is affected over time, because you keep on repeating over time. So then they relate you with that position. Once that happens, it is impossible, completely impossible sometimes to change it. Biden was obviously the dominant character of the candidacy or candidature of the Democrats for a very long time. Then towards the tail end, Harris assumes that character. Now, to have that character as the dominion over the population for a long time was going to take some time. It needed the citizen to get involved with that until such a time when the marketing is enough for the citizen to turn from Biden as a competitor, as a dominant character to Harris. So the dominant character in terms of marketing is basically to continuously imbue, inform, cajole, seduce the population into the character element in the mind. And relating solutions with the character, because it's a question of that character versus the solutions that are needed for the problems of the society. Now, because that happened, because the other way, of course, was to try and panel beat Biden towards a dominant character as to beat Trump, but that was going to be fearsome because he had done very poorly in the debate, the last debate with Trump. And therefore, when Kamala Harris came in, it's going to be impossible, I mean, to, get into the deepest part of society, convince society that Harris. Remember, Trump had been the presidential candidate right from after election. In fact, after the insurrection, where he went and caused commotion in parliament and whatever it was, the trial, he was always somebody talked about. He went through a trial, he went through a conviction, he went through an appeal. He was always the issue, the candidate. Remember, in politics, it's not about bad publicity, it's about publicity. Continuously, incessantly, dominantly, you know,
have to be there.
The character has to continue to be put into the people out there. Back home, President William Ruto started his campaign immediately. They got the second term with President Uhuru Kenyatta. That was criticized, yes, because obviously the nation has to heal, and fast forward is that something has to be done in terms of building the nation. But as a personal, as a persona to the people, you need to continue relating to them. Was it in church, sports, whatever? Because there's the youth, there's the women, there's this. Then there's the ethnic diversity, the Trukanas, the Dorobos, the Giriamas, the Wardeis, the Kikuyus. Until such a time Mlima ticks, until such a time Mulembe nation ticks, the Luo nation ticks, every time, dominantly. If you do that, then there's character dominance. So I think elections are putting out your character out there and making dominant, relating to the solutions of the problems facing the people, and Harris didn't have that.
That reminds me of...
Basically, if I think she had more time, she would have... Then, remember, journalism and media is very important. When Harris used it very well, but I think she was not used to the interaction with the media as such, because you need to know what to say to the media at what time, when, and all that. So that those technical issues she didn't know. When she was asked, because of course, when you're moving from one regime to that, understanding what you've done, you want change. Election is about change to the next. Change must be new. There's no change that is constant. So the change from Harris to another, from Biden to another regime, because people were looking for change. She was not representing change. When asked what she would do differently from Biden, she basically said she didn't see anything that she would have done differently.
Yeah.
And you see that doesn't represent change. It remains a constant. Even food, whether it's the best food, it's rice, it's meat, it can be boring. It comes a time when you don't want to eat the same food. Just that change is important. Of course, that change is as good as a rest. So, because she didn't represent the change, another 10 years, for instance, or 5 years, was going to be toxic. And monotonous.
Yeah.
So to that extent alone, she basically dropped down what was probably a slim lead at that time.
What do you see in Trump's administration for the next 4 years?
It's going to be dramatic. I personally looking forward. I love it. You're never bored with Trump, ever. The good and the bad is going to be a cocktail of the same.
Yes.
Because he does not just act. I think he pronounces himself in the action. So he doesn't mince words. Whether he likes this, he likes it. He doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And then he pushes us to whatever result. For instance, I expect, we have now the International Convention on Climatic Change. I expect that he is going to whittle down probably the prominence of climate and the fact that it is an issue that's prominently affecting the world today. Yeah. He doesn't believe in that or has no passion for climate issues completely. He has himself pronounced in that, and that he doesn't behave different from the way he pronounces himself. In matters, Gaza, I think is going to be decisive on stopping it. He's not the president now, obviously. He's just an elect. But when he comes to power, we expect that he's going to put into place, policies and international, probably administrative initiatives to stop it. Also, Ukraine. The character is quite domineering in the world. So when he says this has to stop, it's a pronouncement you can't ignore.
Okay.
And he will say it anytime, anyhow. The last, I think, about the good about him is criticism is never an issue to fear. So the fear of saying this and eliciting criticism,
he'll pick it and run with it.
Beauty is you will not get something else from what you see.
Yeah.
So yes, African policy, I know there's much. He's a pure capitalist. Work for yourself, get your own money, but don't look for donations.
He's never had that soft spot and a soft heart for Africa.
He's a Puritan in terms of his approach for even the American society. He wants it white. He would rather it remains the way it is. But he thinks the Caucasians, Africans, and other people, when they come there, they adulterate the society, and therefore taking away the would-be gains or resources that will be shared there. Everyone looks at it that way. I mean, South Africa, there has been quite a problem there with other black people, xenophobic, and it goes everywhere. The discomfort of a foreigner coming to your turf in terms of dominion happens.
Yeah.
Even a dog, back in the village, if you go there and you're not, the owner or a person who is dominantly there and you're a foreigner or a visitor, he barks at you.
Yeah.
Sometimes he chases you away. That's dominion. So the character of dominion is such that people would want to retain theirs as much as possible and would abhor or would do not want other people to come to share the resources that are there. It's normal for any character. The wars that we fight in this world are because of land, because of dominion and jurisdiction, and what will be probably in the mind.
Even back home now, even President William Ruto actually called him last week, and he said that they discussed areas of mutual interest for Kenya and United States, including trade and security, among others. He also briefed Trump on the ongoing security support mission in Haiti, which is being led by Kenya, among other areas of cooperation. So, yeah, President William Ruto has already put his call to him, and we expect to see what is going to happen. Let's come back home and talk about matters za nyumbani sasa.
On matters Haiti, for instance, the problem we have there is, you see, when he says American first, honestly, he has no business supporting the Haitians, because that's charity, almost like charity. It's an international obligation, but honestly, he has no business helping. Now, he will do it if the American interest, for instance, is protected? Is there a drug issue involved?
Is it affecting America directly?
Yes. If there is, then he'll look into it in terms of his policy of American first. If it isn't, then we have to bring our brothers home, send our KQ and get them home. Because you see, that whole packaging is, at the center of it, is US funding it. We even have problems there as we speak, as at yesterday. I think they sacked their Prime Minister and put another one for the council that's leading the country on account of the politics, the turmoil of politics. But looks like there's a surge of the gang violence as at yesterday. There was really good big fighting there. So if we don't get the weaponry, we don't get the ammunition, we don't get the resources, because we can't give our own from here, it's not even enough, then we have to bring our boys home, and we can't endanger the lives of our brothers and sisters who are there. So yes, it depends on what he says. What he says is then affects us. That's why if America coughs, we have to catch the sneeze, the flu, on account of the fact if America sneezes, even if it sneezes, we have to feel the effect, the ripple effect. Because if it says it's not going to deal with Haiti, that's it. We have to make decisions on our own.
What do you make of what's on the front page of the Standard? Home of wash cleaners. That's on the front page of the Standard. Remember what former CS Matiang'i said? In as far as he spoke about some members of parliament that the country would be dominated by wash and all manner of criminals. But now Standard says that home of wash cleaners. A government report points to a worrying trend where money launderers have found a safe haven. The rise in suspicion, financial transactions over the past 2 years shows that there is a multi-billion shillings illicit trade and it's not thriving but putting the economy under pressure. Are you surprised?
Well, there has always been the trend of foreign direct investments, purportedly or genuinely, where money has to come from out of this country for purposes of building the country, projects and so on and so forth. Now, you need to protect the economy, because the mere fact that a lot of money is coming into the country does not mean that the country is going to grow or that money is going to be used here. So it has to be a balance on the influx. That which comes is balanced with the needs of the country, to balance especially the shilling as against the dollar. Now, why this becomes a concern is because then also part of this money could support illicit activities such as terrorism, such as drugs, and so on and so forth. There is an institution that looks through all monies that is coming, especially money of a certain amount, where then you have to justify the projects that are going to be done here, and the money is traceable to the person and personalities. Some money, of course, looking at the path that it has taken, is suspected. The banks also have obligation to report any financial activities that look suspicious, especially a certain amount. Even if you don't report that, it can be traced, the amount can be traced within the economy and probably can be investigated. Now, to say that money has come and it's allowed is because then it means that the tools that are put into place to check on that are either not working or are compromised. Suffice it to say, therefore, that it is important that it is not a celebration that money comes here. It actually can destroy our economy completely. So whatever comes in here, one, must be to steady the economy. It must come in an amount that is commensurate of this magnitude of the economy. We are still a growing economy and a small economy comparable to the world. Number two is we can destroy our country very easily, because when money comes here and is used for illicit business, such as terrorism and drugs, we harm our economy. And lastly, money in itself is useless unless it helps to develop, sustain the quality of life for the people. So it must be seen to do exactly that. It is not just money to be present, money to be able to develop, bring jobs, and especially bridge the gap between the poor, the have and the have-nots. That becomes money that is important to the country, but just not money that is brought for purposes of probably acts that will be harmful to the economy and to the country and the people of the country. Yep.
Okay. On the front page of this Daily Nation, plum job for 6 billion shillings oil scam suspect. I'm talking about one lady, Lucy Anangwe, and she was mentioned in the oil scandal, and now there's a probe into by Trade Cabinet Secretary Salim Mvurya, who is on the spot for allegedly influencing the appointment of Lucy Anangwe as the managing director of the Kenya National Trading Corporation, despite being adversely mentioned in the 6.5 billion shillings edible oil scandal. So Ms. Anangwe appointment comes despite an advisory from KNTC board chairperson Hussein Debaso. But here she is now, the managing director. In as much as there is a case, I know you'll say that until proven guilty.
Well, that's not the province of the Constitution, unfortunately. It's true that you are presumed innocent until proven guilty. That is one. But there's character. There's a character element put in the Constitution that we need to check before a person's appointment. The content of character will be how the person has presented himself to the public, which the public has consumed. And that's why public participation is important, because then the public expresses itself in matter of the character content on how the public has associated itself with the character of the person to be appointed. So Article 10 of the Constitution creates the distinct issues to be checked when a person gets into office. That read with the fullness of Chapter 6, the integrity issues that are there. I do think that it was put there for purposes of pre-issues before, that is matters before appointment. The pre-issues that come out are to be looked at in the to express the character of the content of character of the person. And therefore the judgment here on whether a person should assume office or not should be the content of character expressed by the public. That's how the Constitution has repackaged the whole issue of whether you are into appointment or not necessarily on one of the issues being whether you are convicted of a crime or not. So one of the issues, yes, were you convicted of a crime or not, you look at that. After that, then you look at the content of character in terms of how people are going to reply to the character of the person who is proposed for appointment. So pre-appointment issues. The appointment issues are different because then it's how you behave, whether you misuse public money and so on and so forth. But the pre-appointment issues are the ones that are put in the Constitution. Conviction for a crime in this country is a pre-appointment issue. And the content of character itself, as you put across, is a pre-appointment issue. Not to look at pre-appointment issues is to breach the Constitution. And therefore, yes, it's actionable and the courts may stop it. They have done that before. That an appointment becomes unavailable to a person because of past conduct and behavior, notwithstanding that the person has not been convicted, is an issue.
Now, being mentioned in the 6.5 billion shillings edible oil scandal, is that enough to stop somebody from appointed to this position?
Yes and no. Yes, because it's a pre-appointment issue. Why does the public then have to express itself in terms of public participation and giving their views? That's a pre-appointment issue. And therefore, yes, the public has to say it's not everything that has been mentioned associated with a person becomes an issue that bars the person of taking the appointment, because then there are institutions that do the investigation. For instance, there's DCI can give a report, NIS can give a report, ESCC can give a report, and Parliament can give a report. So when that report is given, then the measure and content of participation or adulteration of that character becomes more important. How close or how proximate was the person to the issue at hand that is offensive to the public, and that becomes important. So it's not always to say he didn't talk well, his language was foul, and so on and so forth. He didn't appear well on this day, he was drunk.
So you should not be given that position on that people.
Yes, so it's how the content of the offense to the public in terms of whether the person can hold in trust of that office for the public, won't bring the office to public odium or or will abuse the office, or his presence in that office doesn't look to demean the office.
Let's take a break. When we come back, I want us to talk about the issue of 2027. Deputy President, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is still seen as a big influence in the mountain, and how is mountain going to react to some of the issues being raised? I'm also informed that some of the MPs are finding it so hard in their backyard because of that impeachment. We'll take a look at that shortly when you come back. Stay with us.
Thank you for joining us on Healthy Living. Stay connected to Voice of America at voanews.com. A look at your kidneys and how they impact your health. And an expert discusses chronic kidney disease and how to protect yourself. And Ivorian psychologist Noor Bakayoko shares some insights on bullying and what can be done.
It's important to avoid major events or major health crises.
How do you know if your cough is due to a serious condition? We'll have some answers. Stay well
and strive to make every day a healthy day.
Umeshindwa kumlea. Wako utaliaje? Huyu mpe mwenzake atashika adabu. Mvunjaji wa nyumba za watu. Sherehe ni muhimu wakati wa shida. Manake hii sherehe ndio iko pale kulanisha roho. Umenifahamu?
Kusikia umeenda kuuropo kwa hili jambo kwingine, ndio utajua sira simba mwitu.
Ni mimi. Baba alinieleza mengi sana kuhusu Pete.
Mengi yapi?
Wewe ni nani na unataka nini?
Ama kweli hapo kwa kujua mengi hujakosea. Lakini kuna mambo mengine huyajui. Hautakuja kuyajua. Na wala hauna budi kuyajua. Mpaka na hata kuyasikia. Mpaka pengine labda ukifa.
Felista, unabahati kuwa mimi ni mtu mpole na sipendi mshike. Leo hii kichwa chako na kiwiliwili ningehakikisha vimetengana.
Perfect. So let's talk about politics for the next 30 minutes. When former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua was impeached, he had that clarion call to the mountain, my people, watu wangu, watu wa mlima. And that statement perhaps did not go down very well with many people, but we all know the kind of weight Mount Kenya plays or carries when it comes to election. They vote as a bloc. There's no doubt about that. And any political leader who wants to be the president of this country must look at the mountain. Now, let's take a look at this situation here, Wakili. So he's out. Do we have a kingpin? Much as nobody really wants to talk about, we have kingpin of this region, this and that. But that's one reality that we cannot run away from.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, because how human being is organized is such that the element and perception of security is a dominant issue in the mind of a human being. So at birth and growth, the parents seemingly will provide for that environment. As you grow out into society, you then assume identities through and through. The identity of your family, where you come from, the area and region where you come from becomes an issue of content of your character in terms of how people look at you, and the ethnicity and the skin color, many other things that characterize you as you grow up, because then you reveal yourself as you go to the public, and that becomes common of you and the people around you. So there is then the hegemony and characterization in terms of clan, ethnicity, all the way until the country. Now you're a Kenyan, you're wherever you are. When that happens, the social environment is not taken away from the needs. The needs are you need security. So you need someone you look up to for purposes of your normal political organization, social organization, economic organization, and how you protect yourself. So it is not enough that the government exists and therefore protects you. No, you socialize yourself in a certain way.
There has to be an individual.
Yes, and that then springs out character dominions over certain people, over the people, because of how they talk, how they behave in the society. So you'll have then people consult for certain things. Even witchcraft gets consulted for rain and for what and for what. Now, there's no society whatsoever or people of a society that won't need chieftains, the tribal chieftains. They'll always exist for as long as tribes exist. Now, tribes cannot, probably in future will exist on account of wealth, because the golfers who have their own wealth, they're gated communities in certain leafy suburbs in this country and even in other countries. And obviously that is to protect and self-determine and self-preserve. There must be a kingpin. There must be a tribal chieftain in any society. And that comes in many ways. One of it is, how has this person struggled for us? How has he fought for us? So yes, there's an emerging character of dominion in Rigathi Gachagua to the Mlima. It is not yet there. I think what Mlima has done so far, the people of Mlima have probably sympathized with him. The empathy element has not yet settled, because once you get involved in the empathy element, and therefore you conquer and dominate on a people. When you conquer and dominate is when you become conquer and dominate. Whatever you say, the people follow. One of the elements, probably I can give as an example, is Nyanza, where Raila Odinga has managed to conquer and dominate the population there, because whatever he says is a character issue that has to be dominant. Conquer is what will give birth to the tribal chieftain or the leader of the kingpin. The only way to do it is through influence in the manner in how you fight for the people and you suffer for the people. And number two is when you have wealth as a promise to distribute to the people, or for gain or perception of gain as a character dominant to the people. So it's more about how you fight for the people in terms of the dominion that you exert on them to protect them, but also a wealth character ordinarily that you express over the people and how you share the wealth.
Why is that region quite key in determining in 2027?
Well, that region remains important because of numbers. Numbers and what they hold in union in terms of the economics. Like I've said, politics is about the numbers you represent, but also the wealth that comes with it. Investments in this country, if you look at it from the ethnic distribution, a lot of the most important investments, especially financial institutions, can be traced to central Kenya. And therefore, in terms of how they get organized in matters, wealth becomes a dominant issue to be looked at. Campaigns have to be funded. And therefore, the people behind the funding probably are the kingmakers. So you look at it that way. Number two is the numbers that they hold. So far, they hold as many numerically on account of the fact that they can influence the pattern of voting. So it's either the government or they influence the government, the formation of government, meaning they contribute to the outcome more largely. There's more dominantly in how they contribute to the outcome of any election, and therefore you can't basically ignore that. It has been the constant after independence to date. In this country, therefore, democracy is influenced by numbers, because that's what democracy says. The more the numbers, the predictable the results anywhere in this world, and therefore in Kenya. So the more the numbers, therefore the more the influence, because of the perception of the outcome, or will be influence of the outcome by how organized they are to influence the outcome. Because
does this treatment really resonate with them? That if you are a leader of all Kenyans, running away from the issue of you're a kingpin and all that, and of course you correctly put it, that in a certain community they'll have to look for a certain personality who will represent their case in terms of the security, the economic desires, and etc., etc. But in this case, we can say they don't have that person they can run to or they can look up to. How will this affect any person who will run to them and say, you know what, I'm here today because I'm going to represent you in the next 5 years after election?
If you do not have that personality, and I think many communities don't look at it because of their internal competition. Yes, it has to be a competitive issue for the best to emerge. If you don't have that personality, you are exposed. You're exposed in how you bargain in society. This is how government works. There is the government organized within a certain geographical fiefdom, where there are boundaries where people have to live within those boundaries. In those boundaries, you organize in a certain system that is put in place by laws. So the laws will say, don't do this, you do this, do's and don'ts, which is fine. But the actual life you live is influenced by decisions made by men and women, few of them staying somewhere and making decisions in some boardrooms, and in the manner in how they pronounce themselves and carry themselves during the day. Those people come from somewhere. They come from a place that has a community. And therefore the resource mobilization is a pull towards you. So there's a pot that has every resource, of course spread all over the country, but the decision making is from purportedly in that pot, from the money and the resources all over. Now you need to pull out enough for yourself or for your community every time. The struggle for resources, therefore, is about how much you can get to your community, about the roads, about the water, about schools, and about all that. So budgeting process is a competitive process for every community to be able to get as most for itself. And that's what leadership is. But you see, there are communities where they are represented by a certain number of members of parliament. 2 of them, sometimes 6, sometimes dominating parliament. Those decisions are made there. But ultimately, whatever parliament says, somebody has a pen and a paper to propose to parliament what government will do. And therefore that person seated there comes from somewhere else. And in terms of budgeting, that person then puts in place the resource mobilization and resource distribution that then favors or disfavors some other places. Equity is equity in the mind and in theory. But in actual sense, whatever money is distributed by a human being. The money that has been sent to counties by national government, that money has been sent there by a person who puts an active, who acts in a certain way that money moves to those counties. Now, there are certain areas where employees and workers of counties have not been paid, doctors have not been paid, because somebody hasn't sent money there. And that becomes important. And money can be sent the last minute, 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks, to the end of the financial year, such that you can't do anything with it, because then it has to come back to for reallocation. Now, that becomes important because the day-to-day management is done by people. And that's why you need a person of your own for purposes of resource mobilization or actively acting for you. And that's how society is designed. The equilibrium and the ideal will be you act in a manner that those facets and fiefdoms of communities don't exist. They do. And the human natural bias to make decisions is always a content of the character of a human being, whoever it is. That's why even today, Jesus died as a Jew, and the Jews have dominance in their mention in the Bible. And we can't take away that. Suffice it to say that how human being is organized is that he then must come from a certain place, And it is expected that for the good and ideal of it is that when our own is at the decision-making table, the kingpin, we get what we want, or there's a perception that we are endowed towards getting resource mobilization our way.
How important is Rigathi Gachagua right now, even out of politics?
My take is this. He is important because of the manner in which he has marketed himself as a spokesperson or a person who always talks about the character of his people. That's Mlima. Two is, had he been given more time in the position he was, in the manner in which he was marketing his policies and politics, his perception and his connection with his people, he will have gotten to an extent where probably he will be the driver and mobilizer of his people and therefore the kingpin. Having been cut short in the environment in which that will have spurred his positioning as a kingpin, I do believe that he will enjoy that traction for now because of the proximity to the issues that happened. But as time moves on, you wear out the dominion. It is then somebody else who has more influence, either in government or whatever character that he brings, takes over slowly. And
so it's upon him now to keep the momentum.
Yes, and he has to keep the momentum without the character definition that he had over deputy president. If he does that, which was inexpensive then, and was characterized by the power that he was holding at that time. Without that power, and with now personal resources to be used in that mobilization.
How would he do that to deter the other person who would come, you know, to influence?
He can't. He could at that time because he was mobilized in a certain manner as to attract power and the tools of protection that insulate him. The police, right now he doesn't have those tractions. Because he doesn't have. Slowly, the content of mobilization as was then has dissipated. Further forward and away from the incident, which is 8 months, 1 year, and so on and so forth, obviously, then he is far away from the sympathy that he had. And remember, sympathy is contextual. It can only be as close as possible to the issue. That's why when my father passed on, I was very sad. And I cried the same day. I'm not crying today. Because that time, we call it healing. But obviously, it's a walk away from the incident on account of the content of things that come after that. So we, as close as possible to the incident, we associate with the incident because of the memory and the human personality
and the stronger sympathy.
But after that, I think people walk away. So I can tell you this. Gachagua has to really work hard to get Mlima now than he was working before because they move on. And yes, Kenyans, as I said last time, are very good at voicing themselves on an issue. The shelf life in Kenya is just 1 week or 2 weeks, and you move on.
That's
shelf life. So if the shelf life of news as to impeachment becomes a historical issue after some time. So it's not history now because we have proximity to the incident, but it becomes historical after some time. When it becomes historical, it means it's in the past.
Why haven't we moved away from talking about former president?
Yes, because of proximity of the incident. I tell you, it's not historical because it is as close as
former
possible.
Former President Uhuru Kenyatta with the mountain, the association.
No, we have. We have, but it's because, you see, the issue is as big as a presidential issue. We have just moved 3 years from his 10 years. So you can see that the content has not been covered up. His effect is still being felt because of the fact that he had 10 years of dominion. We have had 3 years of someone else's dominion who took over. 10 years of William Ruto, if you look at the 10 years of Uhuru Kenyatta, will be 20 years completely. Then the dominion, the psychic dominion to the people of Kenya will be that of William Ruto. We only have probably now historical issues as to Kibaki. It will get there with Uhuru Kenyatta. It will also get there with William Ruto, and so on and so on. That's how it is. Unless something is written for us to read, to be honest, we move on as a people. And that's the beauty about a human being. So yes, we will move on, and the people of Mlima will move on. And again, Mlima has never lacked. It has never lacked characters that can exercise dominion over the people. And it's not true that there's no competition for Rigathi Gachagua. There is competition. There was competition for Uhuru Kenyatta. There was competition for Kibaki. There is still competition in Mlima. There are many characters that would emerge and would also want to exercise dominion over that community. So one day, at a point, we will see, and it will pass, whether he continues to then, because of that, he continues to exercise dominion and over the people, or alternatively that someone else come to take over the dominion of the people of Mlima.
When you look at Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka having that close, the friendship, let me call it, at this particular point, with the former deputy president, and all attention is now focused to the mountain, will it have any sense of balance come 2027? Because probably Kalonzo Musyoka said that he's now the active opposition leader of the other side of Azimio, now that Raila Odinga is also eyeing for another position somewhere else. Will it affect how things will change in 2027?
The act of God is a dominant act which all of us can't do anything about. So if it is written that the leader of opposition will be Kalonzo Musyoka, it is written in heaven. But I've never seen it myself. I have not seen that written. And neither have I had any vision that he's the opposition leader as we speak. You see, there are many opportunities, and we're having this discussion because there are many opportunities that have given Kalonzo Musyoka a blanket check to take either government or to take over as a dominant character in politics of Kenya. He hasn't taken that, or he has not been seen as a serious contender. This time round, maybe he's matured enough over the many years that he's been in politics such that he can take over that. We pray for him that he can, because we need opposition in this country. But what are his tools of opposition? What are his tools? He's not in parliament, he's not anywhere. Number two is you need to have people that are faithful. The tools of trade in politics are the people. The tools of trade, therefore, must be such that they are emotionalized enough. At your beck and call, they can react. Raila Odinga has achieved that. It's a faith that has achieved no other person has. So Kalonzo Musyoka today calls for a demonstration, and we are not going to be very passionate for the reason that he has not himself appealed to the people in the manner as to robustly organize them to a certain destination. Having said so, therefore, yes, you can voice yourself as a leader of opposition, call yourself anything, because what's in a name anyway? But the actual organic organization of the people, like you organize them such that they feel you and emotionalize them. Who is he going to organize? Okay, certainly it's not the entire Eastern. Certainly it's not Mlima. He can pronounce himself in Mlima and say, okay, tomorrow we are going for a demonstration, and they come out. They won't. So what is it that he needs? And therefore it means he is not the dominant character that is going to replace the dominant character of Raila Odinga as the leader of opposition. He will not get there. The fanfare of it, he can speak, but to be honest, he won't get there. The shoes that have been left by Raila Odinga in the opposition zone obviously cannot be filled by Kalonzo Musyoka. He comes out as more as a supporter. You know that people who are made to support others, but for themselves to come out and get supported, it's a risk, political risk to support Kalonzo Musyoka if you want some political dominion. But I can't say this. He has constantly himself lived up to the politics of the day by playing second fiddle or third fiddle, whatever it is. So his party gets people into parliament, he gets people into Senate, he gets some governor here and there, and MCS. And that keeps him going politically. The robust competitiveness, which is a proper friction of politics, if you look at the presidential candidature of William Ruto and Kalonzo Musyoka, at the ballot, he won't be able to beat William Ruto. Obviously, because William Ruto has gone through probably the more robust processes to become president. So he will need Mlima if he organizes himself, but please still play second fiddle. Because what is he bringing to Mlima? What actually is he bringing? There are no numbers that would probably complement or surpass the numbers.
Do you think they've learned their lesson? Well, I know you said that Kenya's shelf life is only 2 weeks.
Yes.
But this one hit so hard.
I think if the lessons to be learned, it is on the issue of interest. These countries, if your interest is threatened, then you arise probably to a certain alertness, which is what Mlima did. But if those interests are addressed, that alertness becomes compromised because then you have your interests checked. So it's a country that is very capitalist in the manner in which it organizes itself. So it's a question of the pockets of interest all over, harnessed together and managed. So if your interests are threatened, of course, then your alertness as to the way you get disturbed in your orientation becomes important. But further forward, if your interests are taken care of, you have no problem. So at the cost, if the port is seemingly, the activity of the port are moved to Naivasha, then there's noise. Is there noise now? There's no noise. Because the port seemingly, perhaps by way of words, has been restored to Mombasa, and activities of clearing and forwarding for the people there and other issues at the port are done at Mombasa. So there was noise at that time, and it stopped. And the threat was addressed. And therefore, the alertness is not at the highest. And similarly to
And the president, if at all he would want to run for a second term, knows very well that he cannot avoid or ignore the mountain.
The knowledge is important. To avoid is a different issue. The knowledge that he can't avoid them, they'll behave in a certain way, is important. Because remember, at a point in this country, there was the question, a bad question, but a question of 1 versus 47. Yes. That narrative was there. And it wasn't a very good one because we ended up with bitter memories. Point is, it depends on how you manage it. Now, the divisive politics, unfortunately, is the character of democracy. Democracy is such that you must divide yourselves for purposes of biases to vote for someone and not to vote for someone. That's what democracy is. How do you bias yourself? Ethnically, yes. Any other division such as color, yes, you can. You can bias yourself on religion. And there's nothing wrong with that, and nobody can prohibit that. And therefore, there's nothing wrong with ethnic mobilization for election. And when do you ethnically mobilize for election? Any day. Even now, you can start campaigning ethnically mobilized for purpose of getting into power. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the freedom of association assembly is available for anyone. And therefore, to say we should the ethnic decibels must be lowered is a good thing. But in practical terms, I don't think we can achieve that. Because obviously, it is the divisions that gives birth to leadership, those kingpins that we talk about, and also it is the divisions that mobilize resources to the fiefdoms of divisions that we create. And therefore, divide is important for purpose of leadership.
My last question to you, what has been your highlight since we met last week? What has happened out there that perhaps Kenyans do not know?
I think the most important thing for me will probably be the elections, the outcome of the election. I was surprised. I thought Trump had a good chance, a fair chance to win, but not with that margin. And I think it's important to know that in election, it's not done until it's done. So surprises would always be there. It's important, therefore, that to reorganize society, you have to speak to the people in what they want to hear. And be seen to be a character that will solve solutions and not create more problems. Number two, you must represent change if you have to get into leadership. It's basically a cry for all the people that we are suffering now. We're in a democracy. After a certain period of time, we will deal with this issue at the ballot. And therefore, we will have this prospect and the hope for better. That is probably the most important part about democracy. That there's hope and a determination of a term where a new term will come, where there's change. I have said, and probably I repeat, change must be new. If change is new, then it means the people who come are new. If you're already in leadership and you want to come again, you must still represent change within the context of your leadership. That this is what you've done, we are going to upscale what you've done in a certain manner.
Perfect. Isn't that a better way to wrap the show? I mean, just imagine change. I like the way you put it. Everything must be about change. And if you have that positive attitude about anything, that change will also be seen. Thank you so much, Wakili.
Thank you.
George Kithi, for joining me on the show. We've done 1 hour. That has been a very good show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll take a break, but GMK continues shortly after this. I'm Victor Lowe. Good morning.
I never heard the music so sweet. I repeat.
Well, go on, me brethren, big things are going. Remember, each and every Monday we have to share down the place with nothing but the best of smooth way the vibes in your favorite station. You know these things, man.
Alafu kila Tuesday, kata simu tupo side, giving you Kenyan music from the 254.
And of course, you can spice up your Wednesday by enjoying blazing hot hip-hop and R&B jams.
We don't got no label. She say she want bottles.
Vibes and vibes as we go all across Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, all the way to Tanzania to give you nothing but the best on Afro Thursday. Make sure you make a date with us each and every single Friday with me, DJ_Liza Diva,
DJ Hildah,
and me, Wanjiko. This is Club One Extra.
Unanifanya nisikie kunyongwa. Hatija ai, mani especially ukisonga.
Sasa ndio masomo inaja officially. Kenyanjui, do you have an extra laptop I can borrow from you? Yani, hapa tuko biashara wewe unaongelea mambo ya kubolo. Kubolo no, lakini kununua iko. Sawa?
Wait, Julia, you mean there's a school where people are taught how to bleach? Kamene. Emojis are those two little icons, the colored ones, normally on WhatsApp or text messages. So, where was I? Hapo kwa pa. Well, that was the other unfinished story. This is another one.
So 17 engagement parties and none of them is yours. Julia, I ask again. Uone sida hapo?
He sat his ordinary and advanced level examination at Government African School, Kakamega and Kenyatta College before enrolling at the University of Nairobi for a bachelor degree in medicine. He capped his academic studies with a master's degree in public health in California, United States. Thereafter, he worked for the Ministry of Health, East Africa Industries and Brookbond, Kenya, before taking up politics. Contesting on a forum for the Restoration of Democracy Kenya Ford Kenya ticket in 1997, he defeated Javan Omani of the Kenya African National Union KANU and joined Parliament, where he chaired the Parliamentary Health Committee. 5 years later, he was elected under the banner of the National Rainbow Coalition (NAC) and was appointed Minister for Environment and Wildlife in January 2003. Kulundu's assistant minister was the Tetu Member of Parliament, world-acclaimed environmentalist and political activist, founder of the Green Belt movement, and later Nobel laureate Wangari Maathai. Together, they laid the ground for the establishment of the Kenya Forest Service Act of 2005, Hailed as one of the most stringent wildlife laws in the world, the act made it difficult for ministers to excise government forest for development projects, as had been the norm in the past. It also set up the Kenya Forest Service, a better resourced state parastatal, to take over management of forests. Kulundu was then transferred to the Ministry of Labour and Human Resource Development. It had come to pass that while the political ground in his constituency shifted in favour of the Orange Democratic Movement towards the end of his second term as MP, Kulundu stood firm behind his party and chose to seek re-election of the Mwai Kibaki's Party of National Unity in 2007. He lost at the ballot to ODM's one-term Atanas Manyala Kea. Kulundu died 3 years later in 2010. Jackie Wambiru.
Moses Mudambe Mudavadi was an influential politician in Western Kenya and within the ruling party, Kenya African National Union KANU. As an influential member of President Daniel Arap Moi's government, Moses Mudavadi was the only person other than President Moi who would receive delegations at his residence. Even diplomats who wanted to quickly pass certain messages from their countries to State House reportedly paid courtesy calls on him at home instead of going to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. For his political influence in Western Kenya, Mudavadi was nicknamed the King of Mololo in reference to the village of his birth. Mudavadi held 4 cabinet positions at various times during his tenure in Parliament. They included the Ministry of Basic Education, the Ministry of Water Development, the Ministry of Culture and Social Services, and the Ministry of Local Government and Physical Planning. He also served as KANU Secretary General. Born in 1923 in Sabatia, Mudavadi attended the old Kima Boys Secondary School before joining Maseno School and then Alliance High School. For tertiary education, Mudavadi studied at the Leeds University in England and Harvard University in the US. Moses Mudavadi served briefly as a warrant officer in the King's African Rifles before becoming a teacher, later rising to the position of District Education Officer in Western Kenya and Rift Valley Province before being appointed the first Provincial Education Officer for Nairobi. During his time working for the Ministry of Education in the Rift Valley, Mudavadi met Daniel Arap Moi, a teacher at the time, and a strong friendship developed between the two. As a school's inspector stationed in Kabranet and in charge of Baringo, among other areas, Mudavadi recommended the future president for an in-service course that paved the way for his promotion. Mudavadi also influenced decisions to appoint Moi as the head of the Kabranet Intermediate School and to represent the Rift Valley.
And we are back. Thank you for staying with us. This is Good Morning Kenya. And right about now, we are about to have a very, very interesting conversation. I mean, this lady that we will be having on set today has been making headlines in the news all over, not just in Kenya, but in the United States of America as well. And today we're doing it a bit differently because I will be co-hosting with my colleague, Mike Megwe. Now, we'll have the one and only Mrs. Hildah Hitzley. She is the House of Representative-elect representing Minnesota's District 38A. And by the way, she has made history becoming the first Kenyan state representative in United States history. There she is. You can see her on our screens right there. Mike, before I get to, I don't know if we'll call her Meshimiwa or what, but before we get to Madam Hildah, Mike, is this something you would have foreseen?
Personally, it's not something I would have foreseen, but I think Kenya, in a way, has set a precedent. Because in 2017, there was another story that happened in Australia. Another Kenyan lady by the name Lucy Gisheha won a seat in the Australian Parliament. So that was history made, and now we're witnessing another history made by another Kenyan lady who is a Minnesota House of Representative-elect. Hilda, do we call you Mheshimiwa, or how do you want us to address you?
I mean, to be honest, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to connect with you and to have this conversation. So I'm not much into titles,
yes.
But the formal title here in the U.S. is Representative-elect Hitzley. But sasa tuko hapo Kenya. So whatever you want to call me, I'll accept because I'm learning the protocols of Kenya and how they address their leaders.
Okay, so probably just for people to get to understand what being a representative for, Minnesota, what is it equivalent to when it comes to Kenya? Is it an MP? Is it
a senator?
Yeah, senator. Like, what is it equivalent
to? Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, and that's a question that I've grappled with for a very long time, because you can't compare, apples and oranges. The structure of the Kenyan government is completely different from how we are structured here. Yeah. If you look at the U.S., especially the state level, let's just talk about the state level. We have the lowest political position is the school board, and then you go to the city council, and then you go to the commissioners, and then from there you go to the state legislators, which is made of the two chambers, right? The House of Representatives and the Senate. And then obviously you continue to climb up to the Congress, right? And so when you look at my role, it's hard to kind of compare. But if you put it from the context of the U.S. as a country compared to Kenya as a country, I would probably say a very powerful MCA, because there was a debate online where I saw people were like, oh, that's just a small seat, it's just an MCA if you compare it to Kenya. But again, if you think about it, the GDP of Minnesota is definitely bigger than the whole country of Kenya. But really, at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to compare exactly what this role entails when you compare it to Kenyan politics.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Your story is unique and interesting. But to someone who is watching right now, I think we should start with a little background of who you are. Who is Hildah Hitzley?
I am a proud daughter of Kenyan immigrants. My family and I relocated to the U.S. Well, I relocated to the U.S. when I was 9 years old. And I really grew up here. And really the biggest influence was the African American church that I grew up in. And so, yes, I came here to the U.S. when I was 9. And then I grown up here, gone to school here. I wanted to earn my master's, my 3 undergrad degrees in international business, international relations, and reconciliation studies. So I've definitely eaten a lot of books. And then I went on to get my master's in global business management. And I currently do a lot of data privacy, data governance, managing a lot of data privacy operations for a major global international company. And I'm just passionate. I love my job, but I'm passionate about community and really understanding, getting a glimpse of what the possibilities are here in the U.S. A lot of people, I don't know if they know, but my family was literally 48 hours away from being deported from this country back to Kenya. And for the longest time, my family fought the immigration system, the very complex immigration system here in the U.S. And we then petitioned Senator Paul Wellstone, who came and really championed for our family to stay in this country. And within 48 hours, our case was overturned. And who would have ever thought that 22 years later, I would be sitting here running for a political seat in this country, not only running, but winning as an immigrant woman in a very diverse district. So my story is definitely a testament of resilience and consistency and support and sacrifice. Because I could sit here and say, this moment was definitely credited to all of this life experiences and opportunities that I have been very fortunate to be afforded.
Mm-hmm. Truly a journey of resilience right there. From just being 48 hours to being deported to being a member-elect right now. Truly inspiring. But you mentioned that when it comes to your education background, you've done international relations, international business, and business management as well. So where did the love for politics come in? When did that come in for you?
Yeah, so that came in. I think it was there because of how I grew up. My parents were very instrumental in terms of, ingraining in us, public service, giving back to the community. Not only here, I remember growing up and we had a lot of, people coming from Kenya staying with us. I don't remember, a day where I had a room to myself, right? I was either sharing it with a family member or somebody who come from Kenya that needed a place to stay. And so we learned early on to give back to the community and serve. But when you talk about the actual notion of getting involved in politics, I think that came later in life when I got involved in leadership roles in my community. And the last leadership role I held was the president of one of the biggest Kenyan organizations in the Midwest here in the U.S. called Mwanya Getinge. And that's when I really started to engage with the leaders at the Capitol. And I realized that I was just banging my head against the wall in terms of getting resources to our community. And that was during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I realized that, my voice didn't matter. The was already there, and if you weren't able, if you weren't one of the legislators really championing, your cause, it was impossible to penetrate that. And so, I after going through those experiences of feeling like I wasn't represented, nobody was hearing me, I thought to myself, well, why not run? If I can run, and then I could be at the table, and then I can be making these policies and being a part of that decision table where I can be able to champion for, issues that were concerned to my community. And that's really when I started to think about, what does it mean to run? I had never held a political office before, and so I think that's where, this whole notion of actually seriously considering running for office began. And that was about, 7 years ago. And then 2 years later, I ran for Senate. And that was the first time running, and we didn't win, but the lessons learned was definitely a win for us, and that helped us to really strategize and put a really strong game plan together that has gotten us to this point.
Your story is fascinating, and let's take you back to the instance where you narrowly dodged deportation. I would like to know, how did that shape your perspective on leadership, especially a people-centered type of leadership?
I think I was too young to even analyze the magnitude of that moment. All I knew was that we didn't have to sit here and hide anymore. All I remember was thinking we can finally be free to be who we are, and really enjoyed the opportunities that this country affords its citizens, right? So I never really thought about it from a leadership perspective, but now that I look back, now that I'm a little bit older, and I've gotten into these spaces of leadership and of politics, I'm realizing that moment really was significant in the sense that, the Senator Paul Wellstone, God rest his soul, he passed away a couple of years ago, he championed for a family, for people he didn't know, right? We were just a part of his constituency, and we petitioned his office, and because he was in that position of power, of influence, he was able to literally change the trajectory not only of my life, but my family's life, and now this community. And so back then I didn't realize that, but now that I look back and think about that moment and what it meant, it was truly, it was centered, it was rooted in God's will for my life. Back then I didn't know it. But here I am sitting here as a representative elect because of what a politician did, what a good politician did, fighting for the people and really trusting and believing in humanity.
That's amazing. Now, I would love to know how your campaigning process was like, and maybe just how different are political campaigns in the U.S. if we try to compare them with how they are here in the country, in Kenya.
So that is another question that I've been getting, and obviously, there's protocol, there's rules and regulations here that govern the whole campaigning process, from the campaign finance board that monitors literally every single cent, how it's spent, and it's public knowledge of how much you've collected in and how you've spent that money. And so I would say the biggest difference is the transparency in the process, because you are running for a political office and you are running to represent taxpayers, voters who are paying taxes to make sure that they hold their leadership, that their leaders accountable, their elected leaders accountable, and then also here, politicians. What I've seen, right, and when I talk to my friends there, it's about making sure that you're talking to voters about, give me your vote, I give you something, right? Is that exchange, that transactional exchange of something for a vote? But here in the U.S. is the opposite, right? Like you literally have to talk to somebody, go to their doors, and have a conversation one-on-one about what's important to them, and really it's an exchange of policy for the person's vote, right? So it's this policy exchange instead of some sort of a mandatory value that is added there. And again, when I go back to the regulatory landscape of campaigning here in the U.S., it's very strict, and those laws are put there for a reason, and I'm actually very proud of that, because it allows the candidate to literally get to the root of really campaigning and getting to the doors, getting to the voter, and championing a message of what you will do for the voter, and having that voter decide with no pressure in terms of what they'll be getting. Instead, they are voting for somebody that aligns with their values, that has demonstrated a track record that they will deliver, and that's how we here campaign and earn the support of voters.
Running a campaign is not easy, everybody knows that, but also there are other aspects of your life that have to continue concurrently with you campaigning. You are a businesswoman, you are a mother, you are a wife. How did you strike all that balance?
We women are very resilient and strong, and we can multitask like nobody's business. But yes, thank you for asking me that. I think you're the first person who's actually asked me how I've been able to balance all of this. And I have to honestly give credit where credit is due, and that is to my husband, Mr. Ondieki. Obviously, the Hitzley name comes from that, but when we first started to date, not a lot of people in my family could pronounce his name, even his first name. So, we sat down as a family, and we were like, you're not going anywhere, I'm not going anywhere. All right, so it was me and my cousins, and we were like, you need a Kenyan name, right? So we gave him a couple of names, and he chose Mr. Ondieki. And so I have to give him a lot of credit for really allowing me and supporting me and loving on me, right? To be able to be out here campaigning and have my back at the home front, making sure our two children are, taken care of, and have a normal, whatever that looks like, a normal life while mommy is out here campaigning. And I have to give credit because, like you said, my brother, it is so hard to campaign because you're away from your family for a very lengthy time. I mean, I've been campaigning for 1.5 years now, from the moment I said, hey, I'm interested in running to this very moment. And so I've been away and really lost a lot of time, with my family, but my husband and my extended family for really stepping in and bridging that gap. For example, my mom, who would just literally cook food, bring it to the door and leave it there and just send me a text, hey, there's food at the table, on the door, right? Or she would come in and set everything up, or give my husband a break with the children or with anything that I needed in the household. And of course, the community in general, who really rallied around me and really stepped in to fill in that gap.
Yeah, you've clearly been able to beat the odds. Not just that, whereby you got to know how to strike that balance, but also correct me if I'm wrong, but as a minority, because first of all, you're an immigrant, you're African, and you're a woman. So you are a minority. So what lessons would you want, or would you love people to pick from that? From your story, what lessons would you want an immigrant who's watching us, who's, there as well, lesson to every woman out here? What lessons would you love them to just speak?
Yes, absolutely. I keep on going back to that resilience. We as African immigrants here, most of us has, we have a testimony of how we got here. We have our experiences, and if you are an immigrant, foreign land, especially in the U.S., especially with everything that, the beauty of the U.S. and also the ugly side of the U.S. with, that is still rooted in racism, and then you add to that a woman. We just saw what just happened. We had a very capable woman, who was running for President, Kamala Harris, and this country is like, we're not ready for a woman. And so it is very difficult. That's another layer besides the basics of running a successful campaign. To be a woman, especially a Black woman, and an immigrant at that, there's definitely some serious work that goes into that. And a part of the challenges that I saw on the campaign trail is first of all, my skills and my experience has been questioned time and time again. People really asking me, are you really that educated? Or, I got this a lot from our community. And again, as being an immigrant woman, there's these double standards that, as a candidate we go through where your own community is looking at you going, who gave you permission to run? And in my head, I'm thinking, did you go to the white candidate and ask them who gave you permission to run? But at the end of the day, I also applaud my community as well. They stood by me in one way or another to making sure that I got to this place. But the challenges are real. Racism is real. I remember campaigning and police, being called on my team and I because we, quote, did not belong in a certain neighborhood because it was more affluent and they didn't believe we were there for the right reasons. And obviously, once the police arrived and they discovered that, I was the candidate and for the majority of those situations, I've created a really good relationship with the police department here. So they already knew who I was and they definitely apologized. Or when I go to a door and somebody literally slams the door on my face. But besides those challenges, I have to acknowledge that the other side of it, the beautiful diversity that, is within my district, where I saw a lot of people from different backgrounds really coming and rallying around my community. So those challenges were just a small voice within, the bigger picture where, I won by 65% of the vote. That means that this community was ready for a Black woman, an immigrant woman, to represent the most diverse district in the whole entire state of Minnesota. And so I want to encourage women, don't be afraid, especially diaspora women, and just in general. When we come here to this country, we literally just focus on going to work, going to church, and going home, or going to school. Those things. But now we have to think about shifting our mind, right? Because we are no longer thinking about going back to Kenya, because our kids, we're having kids here, we're investing here, we're buying homes here. We need to think about what does it look like to build an environment where our kids are going to thrive. My kids are not going back to Kenya to benefit or to rip or to stay in those mansions that we've built in Kenya. They're not. This is their home. And we have to have that mind shift to think about what does it look like to actually be involved civically? Because when we talk about sustainability of our community, when we talk about resources for our community, because we're not going anywhere at this point, we have to think about, making sure that we are at the table. And that table is at the Capitol, at the state, in Congress, where our very unique voices are represented.
Yeah, and Mrs. Hildah has clearly set the pace.
Yes.
She has clearly just owned that table,
Yes.
brought her own table. And, there's where she asked that she was being asked, who gave you the permission to run? And I'm thinking,
you don't really need the permission from anyone.
Why even ask for permission? Who said?
No.
You need to ask for permission.
Yes.
But right now, we take a very short break. Don't you go too far. We'll be back to continue with this conversation with the House of Representative-elect Minnesota.
ukashindwa kumlea. Wako utaliaje? Huyu mpe mwenzake atashika adabu. Mvunjaji wa nyumba za watu. Sherehe ni muhimu wakati wa shida. Maanake hii sherehe ndio iko pale kulanisha roho. Umenifahamu?
Kusikia umeenda kuhuropo kwa hili jambo kwingine, ndio utajua sira simba mwichuni.
Ni mimi. Baba alinieleza mengi sana kuhusu Betty.
Mengi yapi?
Change is here. And this shift is about many things. The country's shifting. This is Kenya's vision, the journey to development. KBC is going to be the home to realize, to discuss, to share ideas about this shift and to know where our country is going.
We dissect the rumors. We clarify the perceptions. A clear picture of the status quo. Change is indeed here.
Everything is shifting.
The shift.
Greetings in the name of the Most High Jah Rastafari. My good name is Marley Moses, the positive warrior, alongside...
Yes, sir, DJ D-Rage, the baddest. Each and every Wednesday from 10 p.m. on KBC Channel 1 TV.
Tunakuletea the biggest reggae party in 254 in a yard extra. Extra niceness of reggae music.
Extra dose of entertainment.
When the thing is nice,
we have to do it twice.
If you're just joining us, you're watching Good Morning Kenya here on KBC Channel 1, and the conversation we are having with Representative-elect, that is Hildah Hitzley, who has been elected to the Minnesota House of Representatives. Hildah, I want you to talk about the importance of diversity and inclusion in political representation.
Yes, I think that is one of my reasons why I decided to run for political seat here in the most diverse district in the whole entire state of Minnesota. And I would even go as far as saying it's the most diverse district in the whole entire U.S. because if you look at the racial breakdown within my district, you know, we have all of the different racial ethnicities, and the biggest piece of that pie is the black. The black population, which is, again, if you break that down even further, is that the biggest percentage of that is the African American community, and if you break down that further, it's the Liberian community, and then the Kenyan, Nigerian, and then all of these other communities that come from the African continent. And so, why I was super just excited and passionate about fighting to get a seat at the table is because when we looked at policies, when we looked at when grants were being written, when we looked at laws that were being passed, our voices, which is very unique, how we do things, how we operate in this society was not being represented. I remember when I was the president of Mwanyegetinge and really reaching out to one of the State Department offices and saying the grant that you guys just put out does not factor that as small businesses, most of them are rent from our own homes, right? And so when you put in there that the requirement is this, and that literally cuts out a whole population, group of population that actually need those resources, that's when I started to realize that, you know, we're not at the table to tell them, can you rewrite this grant to look like this? Can we work on this law to reflect the voices and the needs and the concerns and the issues of this particular population? That's why I truly believe representation, good policies requires good representation that actually brings all of the voices at the table.
You know, that is well in, but also there's also the aspect of having less or no elected leaders, especially for minorities for minority backgrounds. What is that? What is the impact of that, and how can that be remedied henceforth?
I mean, we've seen that impact time and time again in different aspects of our community, our society, right? I mean, the civil rights movement is rooted exactly in that, right? Where we didn't have representation when our constitution of this country was created, you know, and then when, you know, Martin Luther King was fighting for the civil rights, the freedoms of the African Americans in this country, we didn't have a say with, you know, the laws that were being passed about, you know, that our, you know, the Black community in this country. And that civil rights continues to be a vocal point in terms of representation, and that has been the fight, you know, to be able to be at the table, to be able to bring that different and a unique perspective that make up the tapestry of the American population, which is very diverse, right? And so when you look at, you know, what, you know, representation means, and when it's missing at the table, you know, we look at our businesses. Our businesses still continue to struggle because, you know, we don't have people who are championing our unique challenges that we are seeing within our businesses. You know, our schools, our kids continue to slide back and not get the resources that we need, because guess what? You know, most of our, you know, the African American community, these kids are brilliant, but they speak multiple languages, but they're not accounted for in terms of resources to address the cultural differences that these kids bring to the classroom. And so making sure that we are hiring, you know, teachers who reflect that population, making sure that we are providing, you know, schools with adequate resources to address those challenges that our kids are seeing. When you look at our healthcare, right? We right now, I know that we lack representation in terms of a simple thing as translation, right? Having somebody there to translate to your medical team, you know, in regards to how you're feeling, what's going on with you, we lack that. When we talk about translation again, when bills are being passed or when there's important information that needs to be passed to the community, we don't have it in our languages to making sure that our people know exactly what's going on. So if you look at every aspect of our society, you know, if we don't have representation there, we as a community, we as, you know, our families, we see a backslide, and that's why it's so important that we have representation so that we can bring in that voice to definitely bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about that, and just what you've talked about, the fact that some things are lacking, you know, when it comes to representation. Now you have both your feet inside. You have gotten the job. You have been elected. What are your legislative priorities, maybe, from now going forth?
Yes, so when we talk about my priorities, they are really rooted in my community and my constituency. And this last year of literally engaging voters, you know, it doesn't matter what party you align with, you know. I set out to be a representative who will be representing everyone, all the voters in this district. And even non-voters, because we have, again, in my community, permanent residents, you know, individuals who, yes, they have permanent residency in this country, but they don't have the right to vote. So I am also representing their voices at the Capitol. And so when I look at that, you know, it is something that I don't take lightly, and it is something that, you know, I think that, you know, we need to acknowledge as a community. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I answered your question. I think I'm missing something there. Yeah,
I was asking about your priorities now, going forward.
Oh, yes, my priorities. Of course, yes. I was going down the rabbit hole of, like, you know, they're rooted in my community. And those priorities are very simple. You know, my constituency is asking that I'm fighting for a safe and thriving community, and what that looks like from public safety. So I want to champion, you know, a public safety policy and law that really is rooted in community, where community have a say in what that looks like, where we're supporting our law enforcement and other agencies to be well prepared and equipped to address, you know, the public safety issue, making sure that we are creating laws that hold people accountable for their actions, but at the same time are fair, right? So that's number one. I look at our education, you know, making sure that our schools are fully funded, where we are not, you know, creating this heavy burden on our teachers to be a disciplinarian, to be mental health specialists, to be all of these things to our kids, and then we expect them to teach our kids to thrive thrive in the educational setting. And so making sure that our schools have the resources to be able to make sure that our kids are thriving and are really, that they're getting and receiving world-class education that we pride ourselves in. So that's number 2. Making sure that our workers are getting livable wages where, our unions are strong and they're protected, and making sure that, they are able to go to the bargaining table with whoever and have a strong front in terms of making sure that they are fighting for the workers' rights. They are fighting for fair and livable wages, that they are fighting for healthcare benefits for the workers. And then I also want to champion small businesses, because my constituency is made of small businesses who have gone through a tremendous trial, especially with the COVID-19, where most of the small businesses closed. But within my district, they're still here, they're still resilient. So making sure that their voice is also being heard at the Capitol. I mean, I could go on and on about healthcare, right? Making sure that we do have affordable healthcare for everybody within our community, where, it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter your background, you are getting access to healthcare. And then lastly, housing. Here in the U.S., we all are in different, levels of life. Whether you are a young person who is finally ready to, leave your parents' home and get your first apartment, to, people who are ready, young families who are looking for their first home. For example, my husband and I, we finally bought our first home, within the last year or so, so making sure that my community, my constituency have access to affordable, housing options that fit their current need. That's definitely going to be on top of my agenda as well.
Well, you were elected as a Democrat, and now the president-elect of the United States is a Republican, that is Donald Trump. So from a policy standpoint, what do you foresee as a challenge, especially when it comes to issues of immigration, healthcare, economic opportunity, especially for immigrants?
Again, as a Democrat, it's definitely a bittersweet to be fighting so hard as a party in general, not just my race, but as a party in general, to really see the turnout. And if you ask me, why, Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, lost this race, and my governor, Tim Walz, is because people just didn't turn out to vote. Democrats. I'm going to put it on my party. Democrats didn't turn out to vote. If you see the numbers that came out, from, the last election where, Biden won by, a couple of million, and then you see the numbers now, about 20 million voters didn't vote. The majority of them, are aligned with the Democratic Party. And I get it. People were just sick and tired of politics, and I get that. But unfortunately, it is what it is. We're here. This is a democracy. We have to, respect the voices of the people and really now sit here and grapple with the idea of, well, it's not even an idea anymore. It's the reality, right, of a Trump presidency and his administration, where he's been very clear about what he's going to do. We saw what he did last term when he was the president, and that's going to impact, especially, for example, the Supreme Court of this country, where he literally was able to stack the Supreme Court to be so conservative that the policies and the laws that they passed and will impact us for the next 40 years, right? And so when you break it down to the immigrant community, there's a couple of things at stake right now, right? So we are looking at strict immigration, policies and visa requirements. It's already a very complex topic, right? Yeah. But now, it's going to alienate a big population that make up the tapestry of this country when it comes to our economy, when it comes to, our society. And so that's going to be impacted. You're looking at refugees and asylum seekers, where people are literally looking for a safe haven, to come to, and they're going to be impacted. The one that is personal to me is this DECA. It is definitely an act that, we are very, nervous about and what he's going to do. And that program is basically protects, especially kids, children, babies who came here when they were, just babies. For example, I have a family member who came here when, her parents brought her to this country when she was only 3 years old. This is all she knows. She doesn't know Kenya, right? And so to be on the verge of being deported to a country that she has no idea about, it's definitely something that, is a real concern and a real fear for a lot of immigrant families. And then lastly, employment and economic opportunities. He's been very clear about where he aligns. He supports, big corporations and don't really care about the small mom and pop shops that really make up the tapestry of this country, the working people. So we are going to see, a decline in that and really making sure that, our economy in general, the workforce in this country, that, the immigrant community, the immigrants have built this country, that's definitely on the line. And again, only time will tell. But from his, campaign, from his presidential administration last time to his campaign rhetoric, as a Democratic Party, we're hunkering down for the next 4 years and making sure that each state, with their own liberties, can definitely put in, mechanisms to make sure that its citizens are protected from whatever happens at the national level.
Mm-hmm. And I still want to pick on that just a bit. Is that a struggle for you? And will that maybe interfere or with your maneuvering as in taking your responsibility for the position that you've been elected?
That's a really good question because, and it's hard to answer, but all I have to say is that, if you look at the news, this is public knowledge, so I'm not sharing anything that I shouldn't be sharing. And I want to definitely be careful how I phrase this. So if you look at the news, especially at the state of Minnesota and the House of Representatives, the lower chamber of the legislature, we are tied, and that's history in the making. I think the last time we were tied, it was back in, I think, 1970s. And so as a rookie coming in, I'm coming in with, having a House of Representatives being 67 Republicans and 67 House of Representatives. So we no longer hold the majority like we did the last legislative cycle, where we had what we call a trifecta, where our governor was a Democrat, and then the House of Representatives, we had the majority, and then the Senate, we had the majority. So we definitely, took advantage of that, and as a state, passed very progressive, agenda, which, we were able to accomplish then. But now this time around, obviously, we continue to have, Tim Walz as our fearless DFL, governor, and then we also were able to maintain the Senate. The question is now in the House of Representatives and what that's going to look like, who is going to be, how do we, talk about power sharing within these two parties to make sure that we, move this state forward and be a model for the rest of the U.S. in regards to how we are going to conduct, a joint leadership sharing agenda. And so, I've already done my orientation, and I'm going to continue doing my orientation until January when the legislative session takes into place and when I'm sworn in. And the conversations we're having as a party is what do we need to do to come to the table and make sure that we should make sure we are, the power sharing agreement, obviously we are okay with that, but also provides us with an opportunity as elected officials and as leaders to literally put our differences aside and say, at the end of the day, we are here to work for the people, and that's where I'm gonna come in, and that's the kind of mentality I'm bringing to the table, saying, I don't care who you are, I don't care what party you align yourself with, we have to reach across the aisle, both of the two parties, and make sure that we are working for the people of Minnesota, the people who voted us into office.
Yeah, and still on that, as you said, you are there to work for the people, and servant leadership is what is always applauded, So when we talk about servant leadership, what does that look like for you? From your point of view, what is servant leadership, and how is it supposed to look like?
I think servant leadership for me is rooted in transformative leadership, meaning that, it's about serving the people and meeting them where they are, right? And one of the things that I really want to do is making sure that I'm accessible. I'm a representative who is able to, be able to be accessed by its constituency and the people who voted me in. So when we talk about servant leadership, it comes down to, putting my personal agenda aside and making sure that I am listening, I'm proactive, I'm transparent. I am bringing all of these people to the table to talk about what's important. Is bringing in experts and knowing that I'm limited in my knowledge about all of these different aspects. If you ask me about, a data privacy, data protection regulation, I can talk to you all day about that, but I don't know, everything about all of these other different topics that I have to bring myself up to, speed on. And so to me, when I talk about servant leadership, is making sure that, key important voices are at the table, even those that you don't think, have something to say, making sure that I'm intentional about bringing in people who, never thought that they could even approach a representative or an elected official, making sure that we are creating room for everybody to have a say in that, and that I'm representing my community in a manner that do say, yes, your voices have been heard and they're being represented well.
Even as you are achieving or breaking the glass ceiling, you've stayed true to your roots, and I would love to know how has that shaped your approach to leadership?
I have to applaud my parents for, how they raised my siblings and I, people are shocked that I know more Kisii than I know Swahili, but the fact that I know both languages, I can understand them both fully, and for the Kisii part, I can speak fluent Kisii, and obviously, I think I've done some interviews now where, I'm struggling with my Swahili, but really that's a testament of taking pride in who I am as a Kenyan American. And because of where I'm from and root that I come from, and that journey of resistance and the challenges that my family had to, and the fight that we had to, fight to be in this country, just reminds me that I too belong here, that we paid our dues to be here, and it's truly just humbling, knowing that, I get to be a representative that really shatters that glass ceiling for our people, not only for the Kenyan community, but for the whole, African immigrant community in this state to, take up the mantle. Obviously the Somali community has done a great job of making sure that their voices are heard. For example, there's a couple of universities here that are literally teaching Somali language. Right? And they have a representative in Congress in DC. What about the rest of us who've been here for this long? And so it's truly an honor to be the first Kenyan born, right? Because the first Kenyan, obviously, that had roots was Obama. And the fact that I am the first Kenyan born to ever be elected into office in this country is definitely a testament of how far the Kenyan community has come in this country to be able to say, we too belong at the table.
Yes. And owing to that, I'm tempted to ask, do you miss Kenya?
Kenya?
Yes.
Absolutely. I will always have Kenya in my heart, and that's why I'm very intentional in making sure that I maintain, my Kisii traditions and culture and the language. Right now, my 6-year-old, we were just joking, and she comes down and she's like, "Sitaki kelele," and I'm sitting here going, "Wait a second now, where did you learn this?" Right? And having my husband taking that initiative to really learn a little bit of Kisii, so that he can communicate with my grandparents and our elders. So I take pride in that, and I do miss Kenya. And I take the initiative of actually coming there as much as I can. The last time I was there, I think it was last year in January. 2 years ago, actually, I brought my whole entire campaign team to see where I come from, because they were like, we want to see where Mheshimiwa comes from, right? And so I do miss Kenya. And one of the things that I'm super excited about is to see, what's possible within this role. What can we do to collaborate and improve people's lives there in Kenya as well? But obviously, I want to be very clear that my priority is going to be this Senate District 38A constituency. But at the same time, each state, again, like I said, has opportunities to engage foreign entities and making sure that we are, creating pathways where we are sharing, whether that is, cultural cultural exchange, or whether that is economic development. And so I'm excited to, go to the Capitol. And again, I have no idea what all this entails and what's possible, because a lot of people really are assuming a lot of things about what's possible in this space. And my answer has always been, I don't know. But guess what? I'm going to go to the Capitol, look at what's possible, and then really engage, whoever I need to engage, the key stakeholders, to see if there's that exchange that we can create between the state of Minnesota and Kenya.
Yeah, and we wish you all the very best on that. And as we come to a conclusion of this a conversation that we have been having, when it comes to Kenyans, we normally have the Mutu Wetu syndrome. We really have that. So I can only imagine the number of calls that maybe you've been getting from people back home, the messages, and for those who can't get you, don't have your direct contact, probably on social media. Is this something you have witnessed? I'm just curious.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It has been surreal in the sense that the overwhelming just support and love that the Kenyan people have showed me. Honestly, not just in Kenya, but the whole entire world. I got a call from, a distant cousin who lives in Germany that I had no idea about. When she told me, well, my mom gave me your number, and she told me I'm your distant cousin. I just want to call to congratulate you. Yeah. And I'm sitting here going, I have no idea who your mom is, but thank you. I appreciate it. And so this is something that I'm not used to because the people who know me know I'm very relational. I'm very, I just want to be with the people. And so all of this attention that I'm getting is definitely new, but at the same time, I know it's rooted in just this pride that the Kenyan people around the world have, that one of their own has made it in the U.S. And so I am going to sit in this moment because I know that when January comes around, when I'm officially sworn in, I won't even have time because my commitment will be for the voters who voted me in. So I have stopped answering messages because now my inbox is, thousands of messages. And because I had a friend of mine who is trying to, keep tabs and all of this, she said, Hildah, I can't even keep up anymore. But I just want to say to any Kenyan, wherever they are around the world, I'm so appreciative. I'm humbled by the just outpouring of love. And obviously, I've been getting, clips of, members of parliament who are also energized and excited that we have our own, also a member of parliament, quote, right? Here in Minnesota. And so it has definitely been, a whirlwind for me, but I'm taking it a stride at a time.
Yeah, I definitely knew that was a must. It had to be there because the Mutuetu syndrome in us is just so loud. Anyway, congratulations, Mrs. Hildah, for clinching that particular seat, and we wish you all the very best as you maneuver, this new position that you now have. This is where we get to end this conversation. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who has been tuned in. From my colleague, Mike Megwe, and I, and on behalf of everyone, this was a conversation of everyone who made this show a success till this point. That was a conversation we were having with Mrs. Hildah Hitzley, the House of Representative-elect, representing Minnesota's District 38A, and she was coming to us live from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, USA. Thank you so much for staying with us.
All right.
RP Stars doing the pressing. Odiampo heading towards the byline and just overrunning that ball.
Harambee Stars are set to face Zimbabwe on the 15th November at the Orlando Stadium in Johannesburg, South Africa at 7 p.m. Catch the matches live on KBC Channel 1 as both teams chase slots at the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations.
Sasa ndio masomo inaja officially. Kenyanjui, do you have an extra laptop I can borrow from you? Yani, hapa tuko biashara wewe unaongelea mambo ya kubolo. Kubolo no, lakini kununua iko. Sawa?
Wait, Julia, you mean there's a school where people are taught how to bleach? Kamene. Emojis are those two little icons, the colored ones, normally on WhatsApp or text messages. So, where was I? Apo kwa pa. When that was the other unfinished story, this is another one.
So 17 engagement parties, and none of them is yours. Julia, I ask again. Uone shida hapo?
Mtazamaji, tumekuandalia taarifa zinazogonga vichwa vya vyombo vya habari kutoka hapa jijini Nairobi na pia mashinani.
Wanahabari zaidi ya ubora wao wako ange kukuletea habari pindi zinapochipuka kutoka pembe zote za Kenya.
Kwenye kipindi cha Tamrini tunakuletea mazungumzo ya moja kwa moja kufafanua na kuangazia masuala yanayokuhusu wewe mtazamaji.
Kumbuka, taarifa yenye thamani daima hupokewa kwa amani.
Hivyo basi usikose kuungana nasi kila siku ya wiki.
Tukupakulie na tukutaarifu taarifa yenye mnato kwenye runinga unayoienzi. Kwenye kurunzi mashinani,
sisi DC.
Of sprawling urban slums where hope is often overshadowed by hardship, a pressing issue persists: teenage pregnancy. Teenage pregnancy in slum areas is often a consequence of a lack of access to education, limited resources, and societal pressures. For many young girls, it's not a matter of choice but of circumstance. Lilian Achieng and Rachel Diana narrate how they fell pregnant into their early teenage age.
Mtoto wa kwanza nilipata nikiwa shule. I was 17 years. Ndo nilikuwa nimemzaa by the way. Nili drop out juu ya pregnancy. Niliona nikirudi shule itakuwa mtoto wangu atasafa, so nikasema tu nimlee. Nikae na yeye, at least ni agro na mimi as a mother. Mtoto utaji mama yake ndo at least unaona chenye analak nini hivyo. Sasa nilipata mtoto wangu kwa 17 years. I was in form 2.
I became a teenage mom when I was 20 years. And I would say like becoming a teenage mom at that age wasn't easy for me. Yes, because there were things I didn't know about taking care of the baby, like how I'll put myself like a mom that time. Yes, it wasn't easy for me.
Teenagers often face intense pressures from their peers to engage in risky behavior. Also, the absence of meaningful parental guidance can leave teenagers navigating their choices alone. Without open communication and supervision, they are more vulnerable to the influences of their peers. Dalmers, a clinic officer at Shining Hope for Communities Shofco, explains.
Well, one of the reasons as to why we have high pregnancy cases here is peer pressure. There's quite a number of youths whom we've talked to, and they've admitted that what is pushing them to engage in unprotected sex is peer pressure. The stories that they get to hear from their friends pushes them to the limit. And then if you look at the freedom that they have back at home, mostly their parents are never there, probably looking for work or looking for money. So they have free time in between to do what they feel is right or as per how their body pushes them to. Yes. So that is what actually is making the pregnancy rates go quite high.
Support from community resources and professionals can offer a lifeline for young mothers. With the right guidance and assistance, there is hope for a positive path forward. Mariam Hassan, a nurse at Shofco, is passionate about mentoring teenage moms despite coming from a religion that is strict on it.
Dealing with the teenage mom was not easy. I am a Muslim first, and according to religion-wise, I'm not supposed to be doing those family planning services. But I decided to make decision for myself because I was raised here in Kibera, and I understand the situation here. So I took it as part of my journey to help the teen moms.
Families often grapple with their own fears and shame, exasperating the burden on young mothers. The stigma is internalized, leading to strained relationships and further isolation.
It was hard because my dad could accept that I will become a mom. So it was a hard process because I had to stand for myself. My parents didn't accept it. And I would say like, actually they have not accepted it up to now.
It was hard, lakini ilibidi waichukulie juu it was my decision. Nilisha decide nikuwe na mtoto wangu juu ni kenye nilitaka. Si ati nililazimishwa, nilitaka by the way. It was hard for my parents, but ilibidi wakubali.
The stigma surrounding teenage pregnancy often manifests in harsh judgment and exclusion. Young mothers face not only societal disapproval, but also isolation from their peers and community. Teenage motherhood presents numerous challenges, especially in marginalized communities. Counseling is very important to make these mothers feel not ashamed of their situation.
The challenges that our teenage moms huwa wanakuja nayo, first is they don't have somebody to listen to them. Sometimes wanakuja already wamesha mess up, ama mtu anakuambia jana nilikuwa with this person, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, I don't know kama niko pregnant. So as a nurse, you put yourself in that shoe, uone venye utamsaidia. Unaanza through by kumtake the counseling processes, unampea the services yenye ana need at that point. Kama ata need continuous counseling, unampea counseling na ku make sure that ame feel hapo ni a safer place that anaweza run to anytime akiwa na problem.
In communities facing the complexities of teenage pregnancy, community health workers play a crucial role. They bridge gaps in healthcare, education, and support, helping young mothers navigate their challenges and build better futures. Shofco is taking the lead in this.
So akikuja tumfanye hiyo test tupate ako pregnant, tuko na the social work department. Akikuja tunamlink na the social work department, tunamwanzisha hiyo the clinic process, tunamwelezea everything, na hapo pia tutaendelea kumlink na counselor because hiyo journey si easy. Utini ukiwa mdogo na umepata pregnant kwa society, watu watakudiscriminate, kuna wale wenye ma friends zako wote watakukimbia. Some parents wataambia their kids usitembee na huyu mtoto, unaona tayari ameshaanza kufanya hizi mambo za ngono, amepata mimba. So kuna ile tunakuwa a shoulder to lean on. Alafu weekend Saturdays huwa tunakuwa na support groups zao, tunakuja tunawaongelesha, kuna wale wenye walisha deliver wanawamenta, at least hiyo journey inakuwa easy kidogo.
While the challenges of teenage pregnancy in slum areas are significant, the strength and resilience of community offers a glimpse of hope. With continued support and education, there is chance for change and a brighter future for the next generation.
To all the teenagers outside there, ningetaka kuambia teenage pregnancy kuna hard, kuna rahisi. Lakini ni hard, si rahisi. Unaweza kuwa pregnant, baba mtoto kuwa yuko, ama unaweza kuwa pregnant, baba mtoto kusupport, alafu mbeleni akuje aanze kukumistreat. So the thing naweza kuambia tu sana wasirush into relationship, early relationship. Yani kuishi na mtu ama nini. Yani they take their time to think what they want in life. Wakae chini wafikirie, I want this, I want that.
The advice I will give to a teenage girl outside there is, I can say that most of the teenage girls, most of them are sexually active. And I will just say, because they're sexually active, me, I wasn't given that advice. So I'll just advise them to look for this family planning, because you can't tell them to abstain because they are already sexually active. And to teenage mom, I'll just advise them just pull up or bring themselves up, and to believe them, what you believe, like wanaweza, they can take themselves as a mother.
what I'll advise a teenager huku Kibera, I understand because nilikuwa nimereiziwa huku na nimelelewa huku, it's not easy. But anytime una feel uko sexually active, hakuna haja ya kuficha. Kuna clinics mingi huku mtaa, you can just go useme unataka family planning. Hapa Shofco tuko na kitu inaitwa Tiko. Tiko ni ya young girls, inawapea family planning services na ni free, haulipishwi. Unakuja unauliza, utagaidiwa Tiko iko wapi, utapewa services za family planning for free, utapewa counseling services. Ukiwa mjamzito during that process pia kuna venye utalinkiwa.
When a woman is given the tools and opportunities to support herself, the impact created goes far beyond her. It creates a cycle of women empowerment where one generation inspires and uplifts the next. For Lydia Wasike, this realization led her to begin the Yomosko organization, an institution that offers young women an opportunity to rise against all odds. Her inspiration came from getting a child at 14 years old and ending up on the streets.
I gave birth at a teenager age. I was only 14 years. Nikapata mtoto wa kike. Yeah, so what I went through ni kitu yenye ilininguza sana because I nilipitia mengi sana. Nikikuja kuishi nilikuja baba dogo with my aunt. My aunt alinikaribisha tukakaa naye. But challenges za maisha, kila mtu na maisha yake. Maisha haikuwa rahisi. Mpaka ikanisukuma nikakosa mahali pa kukaa. Nikajikuta kwa street with my baby. Sina mahali pa kwenda, like completely sina, na mtoto ni mdogo. Nilitoka tu nje ya plot. Hiyo place ilikuwa inaitwa Ngomongo. Kitu 30 minutes. Nililia. I think nililia ile uchungu ya huna mzazi, huna mahali pa kwenda. Mama akasikia, akatoka nje akachungulia. Akaniambia sawa, sasa mimi mali naweza kusaidia. I'll take you in kama mtoto wangu. Tukakaa first week, second week akanipeleka training. Akanipeleka kwa rafiki yake. Akaniambia nimepewa msichana, you coach her mpaka ajue kushona. The moment atajua kushona, uniambia amejua kushona, nitajua venye nitamsaidia from there. So nikielekea kumaliza, kaniambia now there's somewhere wana recruit watu mambo na kushona in a certain company just near ilikuwa baba dogo. Can you do that work? Nikamwambia yes of course. Nilifanya almost a year, nikapata something, nikasave for some almost 9 months. Kazi yangu Kariobangi. After kuweka kazi yangu, then maisha tu ikakuwa sawa, like God alifungua milango.
She saw the crucial need to change this narrative by equipping young women with different skills.
Kuna msichana nikamwona anashinda akikuja kila siku asubuhi, anakaa mahali na mtoto amejikunja. Nikamuuliza, una you willing kushona? Akasema unaweza taka kujua? Akasema Msichana nikamchukua, akaanza training hapo kwangu, akamaliza, akapata kazi hapo tu kwa soko. So after kumaliza akaleta wengine wakakuja, nikapata wasichana wangapi? 3.
Coming from difficult backgrounds, these women have to undergo mental counseling sessions to help them cope with difficult emotions and break unhealthy patterns that could derail them in the program.
After mental awareness, which tulifanya iko every Mondays, after computer classes wako na hiyo mental awareness, at least wanafunzwa. My motivation is when I just see these girls win. It's all about changing these girls' lives.
Starting with just 3 students in a rented stall, Yomosko has grown and now offers various technical courses that are considered basic and important.
Our founder started this vision way before 2019, but it was not like
clearly defined what she wanted to do as per the organization. And now this is when now she started to see there's a need to work with young people in these communities that are not very wealthy or anything. The first cohort we had 12 graduates. That was last year. This year we had one cohort that started in January. They finished in June. There were about 20 students. Now we have already begun the second cohort and they will be graduating in December.
With the help of the community, the organization is able to get tutors who volunteer to teach the women.
We are now currently partnering with Life Ministry and Kin International. We also have a few friends, families who come and step in for us. At the moment, we are also trying to get grants from the government, from other NGOs. Yeah, we're just working towards getting the resources to work for the organizations. As your mosque, we are privileged, I would say, to be centered in a community organization. We work very closely with the churches and the communities around us, with the Nyumba Kumis and the chairman of different places here.
Though the organization is able to manage the current number of students, nothing is without its challenges.
Unajua, everything ni mambo na resources. Unapata, like for the staff, for the tutors, they volunteer. You can't trace a volunteer your entire time. Unapata like sasa mwalimu amekuja amefunza for a month, then anaona sitaendelea hivi, anaenda another one, maybe mwingine anakuja. Hiyo ku change of tutors pia inaleta ni challenges zenye tunapitia sana.
As per now, we have very many ladies who would like to benefit from the organization, but currently we are not able to accommodate many people because we have a small space. Also, the programs that we have currently running require a lot of resources. We have hair and beauty, we have fashion and design, and the resources are not so many. It is not easy to divide the resources equally among all programs, so we are only able to have the 20 students. That's the maximum we can have per cohort.
Seeing successful stories of women who have turned their lives around and made a good life for themselves, Lydia gets the motivation to push through the difficult days, knowing that each girl empowered is a step to progress in every aspect of society.
Na enjoy tu kuwafunza. Wakishajua kushona hivyo nikiona mtu amejisimamia, that is my joy.
The computer classes are mandatory for all students to help them grow with the constant evolution of digital technology.
I was looking for a job, which it was hard because people who are employing people, they want people who are skilled. And me, I'm just from school, so I didn't have skills. One of the members at your mosque, Madam Elizabeth, talked to my mom and they encouraged me to come here. It has built my confidence and I'm getting to learn a lot of skills. I like to teach one or two people the skills that I've learned to also help them to gain something from that. And also, I'm aiming to start my own business.
For Anne, a young mother of two, being here has given her a shift in mindset. By interacting with her peers and tutors, she understands that her voice matters and she has the power to break barriers that have held back generations.
Huyu wa kwanza nilipata nikiwa shule. Sasa nilipata nikiwa shule. After kujifungua, everybody in my family wakanitoroka tu. Tangu nikuja hapa Moscow, yani nimeona life kama ime-change. Siko venye nilikuwa before. Sasa naona at least nimejua kuchona, lakini nilikuwa najua sana ilikuwa hair and beauty. Sasa niliona hiyo nimejua sana, acha niingie kushona. Juu hii kushona at least unaweza pata job. Hiyo ndio watu wengi wanaprefer.
Most of these women have shown significant growth owing to the dedication of the tutors and fellow students who encourage them to strive to be better each day.
The growth has been quite a lot. You know, when they come here, some of them are fresh from high school. They've not learned anything apart from our organization, what we offer. Some of them also may have dropped out in primary school or something. So when they come here, we start from the very basic lesson in all their programs. If it is tailoring, we start from the basics of learning about the machine, parts of the machine, how to step on the machine. Gradually, the hair classes, we also learn. You can see clearly from when somebody entered and how they are faring on.
Mental health yangu haiko kama venye ilikuwa juu. Last time nilikuwa tu nasema hawa nitawapeleka wapi? Life ni ngumu. Kuna kitu naweza fanya. Lakini sasa hii niko na watu wenye wananitia hope na wananisaidia kwa mental health yangu.
Nilipata kujua hii story about your mosque through a friend who is alumni. Yeye pia alisomea hapa. I'm passionate about makeup since nilikuwa na dream from childhood. I wanted to be like Wabosha. Challenge big sana kwa madem ni kupata job. So without the skills you can't get any job.
Lillian Badhi, a successful graduate from the organization with skills on events and decoration, sees how the opportunity has opened new possibilities for her. She can now stand on her 2 feet and support her child.
Tulifanya graduation last year. Nilikuwa nasoma hapa UNESCO. Nilifanya events and decoration. Sasa nafanya na Nairobi County. But still niko na side hustle yenye nafanya events and decoration. Niko na hizo our clients wananiadvertise kwa our clients wenzao. Mtu kama amekuja nimemfanyia kazi nzuri ananirefer huko. Lydia kuna time ilifika singeweza kujilipia nyumba. Aliona hiyo pain nilikuwa nayo kama kuwa single mother. Kuna mtoto wako disabled. Hauna kazi, hauna mbele, hauna nyuma. Mtoto anahitaji therapy, anahitaji vitu mingi sana. So alinichukua kama mtoto wake, akanikombolea nyumba, akaanza kuniprovidea. Ndio akakuja akanileta Moscow nikasoma. Vile alinipata nikiwa, si vile niko by then. Maisha ilikuwa imechapa sawa sawa kabisa. Sasa ninajitegemea, niko job, nafanya events, nashukuru Mungu. Kitoka home kuja Moscow, kuja ni ile akili ya nimeenda kusoma na nitamake in life. Hata sisi kama like kwa mfano mimi kama si hiyo kujituma nisingekuwa mahali penye niko.
With inspiration and encouragement from their mentors and teachers here, they dedicate their time to sharpen their skills, knowing that they shall rise against all odds to show the world their strength, intelligence, and transform generations to come.
Mimi kwa mfano ningekuwa niko idle. Leo hii pengine nilishaingia kwa kutumia madawa za kulevya. Ningekuwa niko hali mbaya. But since niliingia Moscow, niko hapa nimesoma. Leo hii niko sawa.
That's like me to not give up and to work hard and improve in whatever they are doing.
I would urge people that are going through these difficult situations that they should come out and be strong in whatever they are doing. Grasp something, grasp a skill. It will help you, it will motivate you, it will also give you value in your life.
My wish is nezataka sana ni touch so many lives. Like isinilimit ni ikwetu ni hapa Saika. I want to go kwenda kabisa everywhere. I want to touch lives. I want to change lives.
Are you a talented artist? Or are you passionate about a topic you want to discuss?
But money can be very hard to find for an upcoming artist. Don't worry, Studio Mashinani has got your back. Sign up on ajira.co.ke to book a session with our music and video producers across the country. Work on your music, jingles, spoken words, and even podcasts to realize your dream. All for free. Studio Mashinani, Radani Talent.
On KBC Channel 1, we are a TV station like no other. Get a taste of the best in entertainment.
Yes, indeed.
Feel the passion.
Will you promise me?
I swear that you will never lose me. I can't get married to you.
I'm sure you knew about it. That's why you're making fun of me.
Experience the drama.
Get out.
Who is the man in this one?
And the laughter.
Hii wigi umevaa kichwani. Sisi wakati tulikuwa tunaapishwa tunapewa mheshimiwa.
Move to the beat.
We are live from Broadcasting House.
And get informed on the latest happenings. KBC Channel 1.
Wow. Yeah!
We are the full package.
Oh, yes.
And Kenya's watching.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Miscarriage, a heart-wrenching journey that affects millions across the globe. Here, we delve into the causes, risks, prevention, and more importantly, dealing with the aftermath of enduring this profound loss. Pregnancy loss through a miscarriage usually leaves an individual or a couple grappling with grief, guilt, and emptiness. Grace Njuguna is one such lady who, together with her spouse, faced a miscarriage during the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Miscarriage is one of the traumatic experiences that I've gone through in life. Even to start with, it is something that I would never wish any woman to go through it. Even my worst enemy, I would not wish them to go through it. It's traumatizing. It's painful. It's actually among that day is among the worst days of my life. The pregnancy journey was good from conception up to 20 weeks. So I was 20 weeks on that day.
Even as Grace gives the account of her miscarriage, Dr. Agnes Wanjiko sheds light on the miscarriage and its major causes.
The word miscarriage is a term that is used commonly to refer to a pregnancy loss. A spontaneous pregnancy loss that occurs before a baby or a fetus is viable. When we talk about fetal viability, we are talking about a fetus who can survive if born at that particular time. Worldwide, the definition refers to a pregnancy which is lost before 20 weeks of pregnancy. Some of the signs that one can look out for if you have missed a period or if you have confirmed a pregnancy, any bleeding, it could be a sign of a miscarriage. Any pain in the lower abdomen could be a sign of a miscarriage. Backache or even fever could be a sign of a miscarriage, which is even getting an infection.
And true to this, Grace experienced these symptoms and swung into action, seeking all possible medical interventions.
When I was going to work, I had some pains, some cramping, but then I thought it's normal. In the first trimester, it is normal to actually in the second trimester, it is normal to have the cramping, it is normal to have pains. When I talked to my friends who I shared with, because it had begun on Friday, the clamping was mild, but now on Saturday it was an issue. It was now a concern. But people were telling me, and even some nurses that I talked to and some doctors, they were telling me it can be normal. But in case it increases, I go to the hospital. So when I went to work, I felt it is important that after work, I go to the hospital. While I was going, I thought it is just like any other visit. Ile ni kawaida tu nitaenda hospitali, nikuje nyumbani.
Once these symptoms have manifested, is there a chance of saving that pregnancy? Dr. Agnes explains.
Once a woman has confirmed that she's pregnant and she starts getting those symptoms of bleeding, for example, it doesn't always result into a miscarriage. So if someone can go to the nearest hospital or visit their healthcare profession, then they can be able to detect if these are signs of an impending miscarriage or just a threatened miscarriage. A threatened miscarriage is a miscarriage whereby there is that bleeding, yes, from the birth canal, but the pregnancy remains intact. That is a threatened miscarriage, and in that case, if you go to the hospital early, that pregnancy can be salvaged. But some may not be salvaged, because if you have already started expelling the products of the pregnancy, then we call it inevitable.
I called my husband, I called a certain friend of mine who is in Thika, I called my parents. My spouse came, and in a few, the best couple, they also came, and we agreed that we want to go to another hospital. When we asked we asked the doctor whether it is okay we go, the doctor said that she cannot allow us unless a gynae comes who will see me and allow me to go. Because to her, the way I was, actually alikuwa ananiambia wewe utapata mtoto kwa gari, hata hutafika hiyo hospitali.
Among the risk factors that lead to miscarriage is age, past miscarriages, and genetic problems.
We advise women to give birth early or to have children early, before 35 years of age. And this is because over time it has been identified that women over 35 years have got an increased risk of miscarriages as well as pregnancy complications. Other risk factors for miscarriage are like maternal conditions. Somebody could be having a chronic illness like hypertension, which is not well controlled, and that can lead to a miscarriage. Other risk factors, maternal risk factors, could be maternal habits like smoking, use of we call them recreational drugs, like cocaine, even caffeine. Too much caffeine can cause a miscarriage. Then you could also have other factors of the mother, of the uterus, like a cervix which is weak. We call it cervical insufficiency, and one may have repeated miscarriages because the cervix cannot hold the pregnancy beyond a certain limit. Especially for cervical insufficiency, you'll find that the mother keeps getting miscarriages at 4, 5 months, 6 months, and until that is corrected, they may not have any full-term pregnancy.
Dr. Agnes also underpins on the preventive measures a pregnant woman can take to avert cases of pregnancy loss.
There are certain things that we encourage couples. Actually, before even a couple conceives, you are supposed to visit your healthcare professional and specifically visit your gynecologist so that you can go through the genetic counseling, you can go through health education, so that if for example you are a smoker, you can be advised on discontinuing to smoking. If you take alcohol heavily, you may be advised to reduce on alcohol intake. If you take drugs, for example, then it will be nice to visit your doctor and just be told how to prepare yourself for a pregnancy.
A miscarriage usually causes a ripple effect in the life of an individual or a couple. How did the miscarriage affect you as a couple now?
Well, I would say there was no drift between us because, as I said, he supported me in his capacity. Yes, I felt
that he didn't stand with me like I would have wanted, like any other wife or woman who has gone through it, but then he was in school. Na pia ninaangalia venye ameenda shule, it is for our good. So tunaweza kuwa pia tuna sacrifice. I'm going through a lot alone now, but he's sacrificing also for our future. So in his capacity, he gave me the best, and even wherever he is right now, I appreciate him for that.
Dr. Ruth Kamunyu, a lecturer and counseling psychologist, explains why couples may grow adrift, especially when trying to come to terms with a pregnancy loss through a miscarriage.
Mostly it will happen because probably they don't understand the different coping, the different ways of coping. Because a woman may cope differently, and a man may cope differently. So acknowledging that probably I have my different ways of coping. Like probably a man may cope by even just being outside there. He wants to be outside there with others. That's his way of coping. He may be out, maybe he may choose to read books. You know, he may choose to indulge in his hobby. You know, he's looking for different ways of coping, which the spouse may not really understand.
One of the most important part of the whole process is acceptance, because from it, an individual or a couple can seek the necessary support. Dr. Ruth Kamunyu emphasizes on the importance of addressing the emotional and psychological trauma resulting from a miscarriage.
Professional counseling is also important, because when people go through that order, it's actually an order because it affects somebody. You know, one gets emotionally drained. Besides the physical scars, you know, the miscarriage affects one physically. There'll be some changes in the body. But besides the physical scars, the emotional consequences are actually far-reaching. And it has been said that people heal, they heal physically, but then emotionally, it could go for even years if they do not seek for any form of help. So as counselors, we insist on both physical and emotional healing. It's also important.
But what if an individual shuns professional help and decides to go it alone?
It could take long to heal, and they could adopt some probably coping mechanisms that could affect them later in life. As I have said, it can take years to heal. So somebody may take a different route and adopt some coping mechanisms, probably that are meant to make them forget. And in loss and grief, you know, there's nothing like forgetting. It's about coming to terms with what has happened.
It remains important to work with somebody who understands, as Dr. Ruth puts it.
Grief is not a one-day thing, yeah? And healing is not a one-day thing. It's about working with somebody. In counseling, we call it walk with somebody who cares, who empathizes, who listens, who will give the right information, and who will be by your side as you try to negotiate that stage, because it is a painful stage.
People find it hard to talk about miscarriages, ostensibly because of the cultural beliefs, something that both Dr. Ruth and Dr. Agnes acknowledge.
People also fear the stigma. You know, we are living in a stigmatized society. People face a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of self-blame. So to avoid all that, some people opt to just go it alone.
Maybe we already stigmatize ourselves, and possibly you don't want to talk to other people about your misfortunes, because a miscarriage is regarded as a misfortune. So it's possibly just because of our culture. Yeah. It has nothing to do with anything else.
The effects of miscarriage do not only affect women, but also men. However, the difference comes in the way a man would handle the emotional effects, especially because he is supposed to show up for the spouse.
So for the men, it's also good to really be able to express their feelings. And this is one thing that us counselors encourage the men to do. Unfortunately, the way men are socialized, they are socialized to be heard. So they try to shun away, you know, the feelings. But it is always very, very important to be able to express your feelings in whichever way you can. They may not express it like the women, but in a way, be able to deal with your feelings, because there's some pain also This was your child, you were waiting for it, and probably you had started seeing signs of the baby coming. You're also preparing yourself as a father. It's not only women who prepare themselves as mothers. Men also prepare themselves psychologically, the baby is coming. You know, even that aspect of being called a father, at least I have fathered somebody. So emotionally, they also get affected.
Overcoming the fear of conceiving again is a factor that speaks to the hope of carrying another pregnancy to term. Having lost one pregnancy already, how did Grace overcome this fear?
My gyna gave me a lot of confidence. Then I walked with him in the journey until nika conceive the McDonald's stitch. He was also with me. So about now the fear, I didn't have much fear, because I had someone I would talk to, someone I would visit in the hospital, someone I would even call. Then the other thing that made me not to fear, it is because after I miscarried, there are so many people who came to see me. I remember like my pastor came to see me together with one of the elders in the church, pastor's wife, and other women in the church, and also friends around Katondo and Nairobi. They came to see me. So it happened that there are 3 women who came to visit me who have gone through the same. So they encouraged me. I would see that they have even children after they have gone through it. So it gave me hope.
The motivation to talk about the effects of miscarriage is usually not there, but Grace is determined to break the silence and let people know that it is okay to talk about it.
There are 2 major reasons that encouraged me to talk about this today. And the first reason is to break the silence of pregnancy loss and even what women go through after miscarriage. Because one thing that I know is that miscarriage is not taken seriously. After miscarriage, as a woman, you're expected to move on. You're expected to bury what has happened. You're expected not to say about it. Actually, what I've come to know is that 4 women, 1 woman out of 4, they have gone through miscarriage. But people, they hide. People don't have the confidence to talk about it. The second thing, I wanted to glorify God as I share this story, because what has happened to me after this, it's a testimony, because now on December 2021, it has happened in 2020, on December 7th, 2021, now I was blessed with my firstborn, Ezra, who was born as a preterm baby. Then 2023, December also, 18th, I was blessed with a girl. And one thing that I always used to say is that God will restore me. That God will restore the pain that I went through. That God will restore that girl. I used to believe that.
One question that may linger in the minds of those who have experienced miscarriages remains: is there hope?
There is hope even for couples who have had miscarriages, and even if you've had like 3 consecutive miscarriages, the chances that you will have a full-term pregnancy are still high. About 60 to 80% chances of still having a full-term pregnancy. And of course, the most important thing is to identify, is there a cause of these miscarriages? If there is, for example, cervical insufficiency, that can be corrected. If there is a uterine defect, it can be corrected. If it's the maternal conditions that have not been well controlled, like diabetes, hypertension, or thyroid disease, that can be corrected. If there are infections that have not been treated properly, then that can also be corrected. So the most important thing is to identify whether there is a reason or a cause or a risk factor in the couple.
Dealing with the aftermath of a miscarriage is usually a journey traveled in silence. In such wake of profound loss, emotions and feelings can become overwhelming, and that may leave an individual or a couple feeling isolated or adrift. And in the midst of all this, there is hope and light at the end of the tunnel.
These new modes of transport were bringing great benefits to citizens, but at the same time bringing a lot of chaos on the streets that cities were struggling to deal with.